So good morning, everybody. Welcome to the January 11th, 2022 meeting of the Calvert County Board of Commissioners. At this time, I'd like to ask Commissioner Weems if he would give the invocation.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. We could all bow our heads, please, in reflection and prayer. Dear Lord, as we embark on this new year, we give thanks for all you have given us. We ask that this year be marked by goodness. Let the pandemic that has affected all of our lives be minimalized to the best of we can do. We ask you, Lord, for your discernment, wisdom, and judgment in these renderings today, and bless each and every citizen in this county. We ask this in your name, Lord. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, thank you, Commissioner Weems.
Sir.
Next item on the agenda is to approve the agenda. Are there any corrections or additions to the agenda?
No, sir, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion that we approve and adopt the agenda as published.
Second.
Have a motion and a second that we adopt the agenda as presented. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And I should acknowledge for the public, Commissioner Hart couldn't be here with us in person today, but he is on Teams. So, want to make sure we acknowledge that. I have a couple public service announcements before we get into our agenda. Next week is Martin Luther King Day. I want to make sure that we recognize that day. And as Dr. King said, and I quote, "Everybody can be great because anybody can serve." So I think that in recognition of Martin Luther King Day, next week, the NAACP is hosting an annual Day of Service event on Monday, January the 17th from 10 to 2 p.m. They are also looking for volunteers to help with painting and renovation at the East John Youth Center in Lusby. So if you can't give of your time, donations would be greatly appreciated, and you can contact our local NAACP to volunteer or contribute to that function. The other public service announcement that I have is I want to acknowledge all the hard work done by our county employees and our contractors last week to handle the snow event that we had for Calvert County. 10 to 15 inches of snow is a pretty good snow event, especially when it's heavy and wet, and there were a lot of trees down. We had a lot of power outages. I want to thank SMECO and all their linemen and contractors for trying to get everybody back online as quickly as possible. But I've heard very little complaints about the job done by county to get the roads opened up. So I want to take this opportunity to thank our staff and the contractors for all the work and effort that they did. The last thing that I want to talk about under public service announcement is the health department has stood up a testing site at Fox Run Shopping Center, and you can call 410-535-0218 or go online to schedule an appointment, and they are doing PCR tests at that location, which I get a lot of calls about where I can get a PCR test. So we now have a site in Prince Frederick, and First Rate is back up operating, and you can go to our county website and to figure out how to get in touch with First Rate to schedule an appointment. Excuse me?
First call.
First call, sorry. First call. First Rate. They're First Rate and First Call. So that's all I have. Today, the first item on our agenda is we have our Southern Maryland delegation with us, some in person, some online, to talk about our legislative issues for the upcoming session. So I want to recognize Commissioner Delegate Clark and Delegate Fisher, who are with us in person, and we have Senator Jackson Senator Bailey online, and I thought Senator Jackson was going to join us online, but I don't see him yet. So if you two gentlemen would like to come forward and Thank you. Commissioner Bailey, is your audio up?
Yes, Mr. President, I think I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can now. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Snowy in St. Mary's County?
It it still is.
It still is. Yeah, it still is here too. So, Mr. County Attorney, you want to do the presentation, please?
Sure, thank you, Commissioners. John Norris, County Attorney, here to make the presentation. Senator Jackson and Delegate Jones also accepted the Teams meeting, so we'll have to keep an eye and see if they show up on the screen there in front of you. So the Board of County Commissioners is the oldest form of government. If you could do next slide, please, Darrell. And the only powers that the county commissioners have are those that are specifically granted to them by the state and those that are implicitly needed to exercise those powers. We have 7 requests. The first request is authorizing an individual who's employed by a county or municipality to perform marine contractor services. That bill has already been pre-filed by Delegate Clark. It is House Bill number 195. Commissioners have signed a letter supporting that bill, and the hearing is set for January 26th at 1 p.m. in the House.
Could I make a comment?
Yes, sir.
This is the third, Delegate Clark, Calvert, St. Mary's County. This is the third session that I will have presented this bill. The first year was when we got cut short with COVID. Last year, it got caught up in a turf battle between the House and the Senate. So hopefully, we got it through the House last year unanimously. Hopefully, with the help of Senator Jackson and Senator Bailey, hopefully they will cross-file that with me in the Senate and work with Chairman Penske. The only one dissenting comment that we've had on that has come from the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. We were able to overcome that in the House. So hopefully we can get this bill through this year. I'm looking forward to working with the senators and our Calvert delegation to get that done.
So, Senator Bailey, if there's anything we can do to help this legislation move, please let us know.
There's no doubt about it. The one obstacle we have is Senator Penske. And so any help or letters that can be written, I know that you have a relationship with him.
I do.
Mr. President, yes, that would definitely be worthwhile.
So you'll have to remind me at the appropriate time, and I can give the good senator a call. Just don't want to wear out my welcome. So,
Well, it is projected this is going to save the county quite a bit of money in contractor services. Through the efforts of our Director of Recreation and Parks, we do now have the support of the MACO Recreation and Parks Directors Group, who will be testifying in favor of this bill as it goes to the House hearings, House floor.
And I'd like to give a little credit to your former department head, Wilson Freeland, who brought this request to me about 3 years ago. And it started out with just as a little thing, and now it's developed into fairly significant for the municipalities in the county.
well, as we all know, the last 2 sessions have been special. So maybe this year we can have a more normal session, but.
Probably not.
Cautious optimism is the flavor
Yeah.
of the day.
We have to be optimistic. All right, John.
Thank you, Darrell. If we could go to slide number 2. So the county already charges and has state authorization to charge a 5% hotel tax. That hotel tax is required by state statute to go directly into the general fund to cover operating expenses. The request came from the Department of Economic Development that 5%, or a portion of that at least, be allocated to a special fund that would go to help offset the cost for special events permits and also be available to help market the county for tourism.
The only question I would have for when you say special events, are you meaning county special event permits or to help subsidize the cost of private business special events?
So we've been trying to do our best to support the nonprofits and not have them incur costs. So that's our intention, is to help use those funds to help offset those nonprofit costs.
Okay, and would your intention also be that you would, that the 2% would just be the total line item for that, or would you still have the flexibility to add additional revenues to it if you needed to?
Well, I think that if we saw a need that we felt was justified, we would always have that ability to increase. Just trying to set some kind of a minimum funding level so they know they can plan ahead on what they can do to support the tourism industry here in Calvert.
And the last question, there's no intent or thought process by the board to try to farm out the tourism promotional part of it to any third-party entity. It would still strictly be a county entity.
Right, we've not had any discussion about trying to farm that service out. We have great faith in our Department of Economic Development. We think they do a great job, just trying to give them some funds and resources to expand what they're already doing.
Okay.
It's our
Thank you.
intentions. Any other questions? All right, John.
Thank you. Request number 3, and I can't tell if the delegate or senator have joined us yet in teams.
Delegate Ray Jones is trying to get in. So she's not quite there.
Okay. The third request is authorizing the commissioners to adopt a local preference in competitive solicitations following a public hearing. That's authorizing the county commissioners to adopt a local preference after a public hearing. That's not setting what the local preference would be in the state law, so that we can be flexible in addressing changes as they might occur. Or we look at unintended consequences, how county businesses might be harmed when they go to counties that have a reciprocal preference that penalize them from coming from Calvert County. So we understand there are complex issues that need to be considered when setting a local preference. This is asking for authorization to do so.
So Delegate Jones, are you in? I see you on the screen.
Yeah,
Good, welcome.
yeah.
So, gentlemen, behind the push for this is that for me, I think it was my second year in, we did a bid solicitation for the Prince Rose Firehouse, which was an $11 million project, and we had a county business that missed low bid by $19,000. And for me, not having the ability to award that contract to a business located right here in Calvert County over a $19,000 on an $11 million project just struck a nerve. And along with my fellow commissioners, we trying to figure out a way, and we understand there are pros and cons to local preference, but if we get enabling legislation, we would work with our local business community, trying to figure out a way that would help them and not hurt them overall in the larger scheme. So that's all we're asking for in this legislation, was to give us that ability, try to help our local businesses in the best way that we can. Any questions? No?
Seems perfectly reasonable to me.
Good. John?
Next request was for authorization for, if you could advance it, please, Daryl. General obligation bonds for fiscal year 2023. That issue is coming before the board on your next meeting on the 25th of January, so that that amount can be set. We don't currently have an amount. It's anticipated to be significantly less than prior years, but we don't have a final number for that. We understand the drafting deadline is going to be very quick this year, so we can try and get that answer out as soon as we can.
And Senator Jackson has joined us.
Good morning, everyone. I apologize. I'm trying to cycle out of my day job. Today's the last day of work, so glad to be able to be on. Good morning, Senator Bailey.
Tomorrow's the first day of work. Yeah, so we're still working on our bonding request. You know, as you gentlemen and ladies know, costs have escalated. We've got to relook at our projects and the current bonding authority that we have and what's going to be needed. Hopefully, we won't need supplemental funding for projects already on the books that we've got bonding for. So for us, it's a challenge on how we're going to move forward with our CIP just based on this situation that we're currently in today. So while we're not prepared today, we hopefully by the 25th we'll have that number secured. And we certainly reach out at that time and explain what we need and why we need it. So,
Okay.
okay? Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
The fifth request, as written today, the county has the authority to enter what's called multiple year contracts by the header, but what are it actually, in fact, multiple one-year contracts? And we've run into issues with software providers, with internet service providers, with telephone companies, where their standard form contract that they use all across the nation is a 3-year, is a 4-year, is a 5-year contract. This request is to authorize the commissioners or your designee to sign a multi-year contract up to 5 years in the initial term and make it renewable no more than 3 additional terms, so that the total would not ever exceed 20 years. So it could be up to 5 years in the first term, renewable 3 times, never would be more than 20 years before it would go back out to bid. That would be for banking and investment services, retirement and pension system management, health insurance, information technology. So it would apply to those 4 categories of procurement.
Questions?
I mean, I'm sure, John, that you guys, when you draft the agreements, you still have an out for the county anyway.
We have a sufficient appropriations clause, so the
Got it.
commissioners were not to appropriate.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Makes sense. Right.
All right.
Okay. The 6th request is adding Calvert County to the list of counties that allow Sunday hunting. This bill was submitted last year. It's already been pre-filed as House Bill 170 by Delegate Clark and Senate Bill 220 by the Calvert County Senators and Senators Bailey and Jackson individually.
So last year I testified on the bill. I think we got caught up in some other issues going on up there because the other counties were successful, but for some reason when it came to us, we were not. So we'll take another shot this year. And Senator Bailey, if there's anything we can do that differently, please let us know.
So I think the fact that it's Senator Jackson and I are doing this bill completely together, I think will be supportive. One thing I did want to correct the record, no Sunday hunting bills passed last year.
Well, I thought there were...
Senator Pinsky stopped them all. And but we're very hopeful, and some negotiations are ongoing at this time that we will be better suited in getting local legislation through. It was very surprising that he was able to just stop local legislation that was supported unanimously.
Very good.
I did want to comment on this. I spoke to Dale Weems, and he indicated, and I only bring this up today because I was at an event a few days ago, and a very avid hunter in Calvert County said that the deer population is down by 1/3. And he had some concerns about that. So obviously, we hear when we have these bills, and you guys know better than anyone, the commissioners do, we hear from people who are horse owners, and we hear from people who are hunters. This is the first time I've actually heard from a hunter concerning the deer population fall off. So I just wanted to bring that to Senator Bailey's attention. I'm sure he probably knows a lot more about this issue than I do.
Yeah, Mr. President.
Senator Jackson.
Yes, I will be a part of 3 such pieces of legislation this year, Prince George's, Charles, and Calvert County. I think we actually addressed the concerns of the opponents of the bill last year. We just need to work on the chair of the committee to kind of but last year was a different year, so we're going to be moving forward with that. Primarily it's the danger, not only the crop damage, but also the danger on these back roads. I mean, for all of us who are on this call, we live on these rural roads. So again, we hope to be a part of, 3 counties' efforts in getting this through. So.
And the Department of Natural Resources, if there's a population issue, will address that through limits. But
Exactly.
I think if we poll the farm community, see what they have to say about the deer population, you might get a different response.
Yeah.
But
And we're talking private property as well, so.
Exactly.
That's the key. That's one of the main keys that we try to stress, but we look forward to working together on this.
right. And for the horse community, which was the opposition last year, we stated that in our testimony, that this is private property. The individual that owns that property can certainly control the hunting that occurs on that. And if they wanted to have trail rides or horse riding, then it was certainly, the ability was there for that private property owner to say no hunting is allowed and allow other activities. So we thought that addressed that issue, but anything we can do better with that, we will certainly strive. As a farmer, there's always too many deer, and until they're willing to reimburse me for my losses, I'll continue to fight to have a reduced population, because it is significant,
Absolutely.
Here in Maryland, the last number I saw, and that's been many years ago, was $10 million in damages to the ag community. And you start dividing those numbers up. Me personally, it's $15,000 or $20,000 a year, and that's all profit. There's no other way to recoup those costs. So I understand they're the state's deer, but they're eating my crops, and that's a tough line for me. So if the hunters want to reduce the legal limits, that's fine, as long as I can get my crop damage permits.
And for the record, I support the bill. It's just that Dale Weems brought up the bag limits, that they might alter that. And I think that's just important to put that out there, that Sunday hunting, to the extent that Senator Pinsky doesn't get in the way again and it passes, it's very likely that DNR will impose pretty significant bag limits as a result of the decrease by a third of the population of deer.
Yep. All right, very good.
Last item we have is the results of the Compensation Review Committee. So the Compensation Review Committee has not recommended any changes to the compensation or benefits package for any of the local elected officials, with the exception that the treasurer's salary should equal that of a county commissioner. So there would be no changes requested from the state with respect to this. So I don't know if you would like to ask if they have perspectives on the upcoming session, but there is one bill out there that may warrant some discussion, Senate Bill 136, submitted by Senator Ellis.
So 136, if you're not familiar, is the community college issue where Senator Ellis's bill separates all the individual campuses. Instead of operating as one unit, they would all operate individually as county units. I guess we were looking for your thoughts on that legislation. The other bill last year that we were watching closely was 655, which affected voting districts for Calvert and St. Mary's County. Any perspective on that issue for this upcoming session would be very helpful for us and our citizens.
Mr. President, if I might,
Sure.
I will let you know that the Charles County delegation has submitted a document stating that the majority of the delegations not in support of Senate Bill 136. So that's myself and the 4 delegates, which includes Delegate Proctor, Wilson, Patterson, and Davis. So, and from the Calvert side of College of Southern Maryland. We haven't heard any of that, but I'm not for that. So
Thank you. That should be helpful.
And
And
Mr. President, if I could go
Yes,
back for just a moment to the very last request about maintaining the elected officials' salaries. I have one question regarding making no changes to the sheriff's salaries. I know that there is a request or petition by the FOP to increase the law enforcement officers' salaries. By not making any adjustment to the sheriff's salary, how does that hinder sort of the effort to increase the salaries of all of the officers within the Calvert County Sheriff's Department?
so Attorney Norris can address that, but I think the sheriff's salary was taken care of legislatively a few years ago.
And it was
elected official, yeah.
specifically tied
Deputies
to,
are hired.
it was,
Right, I understand, but what I'm asking is, will it affect at all, by not increasing it this year, will it affect at all the movement that the FOP has in order to try to increase the other officers' salaries? Because I understand that that increase was taken care of, but when people look at that in the community, they're just going to see, oh, there's no increase for our sheriff's department, and it's going to seem like we are not being supportive of local law enforcement.
There was a bill, Rachel, a few years ago that moved the sheriff's salary from the decision-making authority of the people of Calvert County to put it in statute so that it automatically raises in statute by state law, obviously. If you would like to bring that authority where it probably properly belongs, which is back to the county, then I would certainly support that. But the current law is that the salary increases automatically because it's in statute. So the county commissioners no longer have that authority, even though they are required to fund that salary, which I think has always been problematic.
John?
just Delegate Jones, so you know, it is tied to a very specific rank in the Maryland State Police. So as the governor gave raises to the state police, at least it is proposed that he give a raise to the state police in this upcoming budget. That would go to the sheriff as well.
Yeah, Delegate Jones, as far as we can, there's no correlation between the sheriff's salary and deputies today based on the legislation that was passed. Technically, we could raise the deputies' salaries significantly and the sheriff would not see that same increase or vice versa. They are completely independent of one another. But we will make sure that people understand that this does not impact the regular sheriff's rank and file. This compensation review board only addresses the sheriff himself.
Thank you.
I also wanted to add that today in one of the Annapolis reports that came out, the governor of Maryland has put in his budget significant funding increases that would come from the state to the counties to help pay for deputies and police departments, particularly in light of much of the legislation that was passed last year that was anti-police legislation, which was nonsense. So the governor has taken a lead on this, and I'm really happy to say that we're hopeful that does pass this year. Given that it's an election year, I think you'll see a lot of converts on the other side of the aisle perhaps voting for this funding to help the counties, particularly since they've had so much pushback with their voting for the anti-police legislation.
Delegate Clark?
I would agree with what Delegate Fisher just said, but the one thing that the way I read that piece from the governor's perspective, it would be a 3-year pass down to the counties of somewhere around $500 million. But you also have to look at what happens after the 3 years are up, going forward, and the burden that's put on to the county taxpayers going forward. I noticed that now that we're on this police salary thing, and I did never had any intentions to really even comment on it, but I did see a posting that was put on by the Fraternal Order of Police about salaries and the differentials between the different counties, and they were a little concerning. But the one part that the public never sees out there is a breakdown of the benefits that go along with job, the retirement, the health insurance, the spousal health insurance, which you folks just gave them a few years ago, and the cost of OPEB going forward. That's all a cost in that factor. So when we say, we need to adjust the salaries, what is it, the 30 or 40% of salaries, benefits equal about 30 or 40% of salaries. So when the money that goes into the deputy's pocket, there's an additional 30 or 40% that goes on the burden of the county, which you have to figure in your budgeting process and how y'all see that money is. So I think that's should be kept at the local level, and the state really shouldn't be involved in that, being you're the folks that have to fund that.
I think currently we're at 55% for benefits.
Really,
So,
it's astronomical.
Senator Jackson has also pre-filed a number of bills, one of which is an income tax subtraction for military and public safety retirement income, and a property tax credit for public safety officers to add some benefits.
So today we presented our request that we have as of now. As you know, things can change and something may pop up and we'll have to make a additional request. But what I would like to do at this time, we just go through and let all of you have an opportunity to talk about, any of your other legislation that you personally are going to propose, or issues, or whatever you want to talk about. And I guess Senator Jackson or Senator Bailey, whichever one would like to start.
I will start, and I'll try to be as brief as possible. I appreciate that, Mr. President. I'll say I'm going into my 8th legislative session, and I'm really not sure how I got all these bills this year, but I have I've been appointed by the Senate President to head the Senate Veterans Caucus, so you'll see my name on a lot of those bills coming forth. I think we have a volunteer fire EMS income tax subtraction modification. There's a phase-in process with that entity, and this was a way for us. We put this in last year, but last year was all police reform all day. And this was actually getting them to a level sooner than a little bit later. The majority of what we're dealing with is how do we look at the police reform matters and ensure that they can be implemented in the timelines that are set forth. We have a meeting pending with the Training and Standards Commission with the Senate President. And we'll be working with the delegates to try to get the same on the House side. Primarily, I have a bill, a Purple Star schools bill, which deals with Purple Heart families. One piece of legislation that I'll say, and all of our bills are online, so I won't belabor anything, but one of the bills that I'm fascinated about, because I certainly didn't know, and I don't know if anybody else knew this, that we've never had a cancer research fund that dealt with our children. We've always had it for adults, and you wouldn't think so. I mean, who would have thought that, where you have the so you'll see me on the Senate side sponsoring that bill, and the cross-filer will be Chair McIntosh. In regards to that. Other than that, it's just pretty basic. If there are any tax incentives we can give for our small businesses, we're looking to partner with other members regarding that. Cybersecurity training, obviously Maryland Department of Health and others. That is a growing challenge for those of us who work in county government. or other governments, there's a security awareness training that we must take. As a matter of fact, I'm going through finishing up my trainings today regarding that. I'm not sure why that didn't pass last year. We have an innkeeper human trafficking awareness bill that passed, we believe will pass this year. I think most of the hotel chains already have some trainings in process, but again, my bills are online, those that we pre-filed, and those that we'll have moving forward. So appreciate your time. And oh, by the way, we're certainly looking to work together on bond bills for Calvert County. So between the senator and the delegates, we're going to look for the county commissioners to work with you on those. So.
Thank you, Senator Jackson. Senator Bailey?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. First thing I'd like to say is when we talked a few minutes ago about the bill that was put in by the college, by Senator Ellis for the College of Southern Maryland, I did sign that delegation letter along with the members of Charles County and Senator Jackson, so that way the other two counties are represented, so that people know that we do not support that legislation, nor did it come by any discussion, any procedure, any policy. It was just sort of a shot in the dark, and I don't think we should treat the education of our children in our community that way. As far as we talk about pre-filed bills, sexual abuse of a minor, we got that bill through both houses, both the House and the Senate last year. It was just in a little different situation, so it didn't pass. But this year, we are trying that bill again. It has been pre-filed. We have a hearing next week. Calvert County Sunday hunting, higher education program accreditation for scholarships, property tax credit for public safety officers, definition and elimination on credit amount. That's based on the county, whether or not you can afford that. Canada geese, Atlantic populations season harvest limit. So that would be the same no matter where you live in the state when it's not the resident population. Going to work on, again, for Chesapeake Bay, the Atlantic Menhaden, population evaluation and trying to stop the commercial reduction fishery that's going on in Virginia. An income tax subtraction and modification for the police auxiliaries and our reserve volunteers who spend so much time working together. We are also working for agriculture in looking at a bill it's going to be drafted right away that deals with SMATIC and the ability to do that statewide. As I say there, as Senator Jackson said, all of our bills are available online, but please reach out to our offices and discuss things and give us a call and give us your opinions, because things are going to start moving pretty fast after 12 o'clock tomorrow.
Thank you, Senator Bailey. Delegate Jones?
So I will be cross-filing the child abuse of a minor bill with Senator Bailey, in addition to also cross-filing a couple of the Sunday hunting bills with Senator Jackson and Senator Bailey as well. I'll also be sponsoring a bill that will require controlled substances to report how much they are importing, and that is in an effort to try to mitigate a lot of the overdoses that we're seeing. I think right now we hold pharmacies accountable, but the distributors who are actually importing and delivering, we have no reporting from them to the state. So even though they're required to report to the federal government, right now they don't have to report anything to the state that tells us how much they're importing and where it's going. And I'm also potentially sponsoring a couple of other bills, but I'm still sort of having some fun conversations with advocates about those. But I just want to clarify, a comment that was made earlier, and I know some of my colleagues across I may disagree about that, but I think for the record, obviously Senator Jackson being a former sheriff, I've stated over a dozen times, and those of you who have worked with me through the years know that I have family and friends in law enforcement, some of which are in that very courthouse right now and protect you folks every single day. Anti-police is not the sentiment that I would say for any of the bills that were passed last year. I think asking for accountability is different from being anti-police. And so I just want to share that with this group of folks today that there's nothing anti-police about just wanting there to be some sort of measures put in place for the general public. But I do support law enforcement and always will continue to look to do that. And so I know that there are a couple of bills that may be centered around, I think the Judiciary Committee may be looking at revisiting the police accountability review boards and how those are compiled. But that's not a definite right now. So I just wanted to share that.
So thank you, Delegate Jones. And today, I think the last item on our agenda is we're trying to work on a draft, the hopefully final draft for how our police accounting board will look in Calvert County. So we have been working on that and trying to stay on track to make sure we have that in place based on the legislation that's in place today, that we're ready to go in June. So had a lot of good public discussion about the board and its need and what functions it should serve. So we are working towards that goal. So appreciate it. Delegate Fisher, Delegate Clark.
Delegate Clark says he wants to go last, so
Yeah.
it's never a good thing. So on the local side, I haven't pre-filed. I'm not a pre-filer of legislation, but one of the concerns that I've had, and I've expressed this to you guys, and it's pretty easy to get behind, is the sheer volume of trash now that we see on the sides of the streets. And for me, I see it's increased significantly on Prince Frederick Boulevard, including all the way out in the middle of the country, Adelina Road, and you travel anywhere, and that's changed. That's a change in Calvert County. And so how do we fix that? There are litter laws in place. In fact, we strengthened them a number of years ago. It was quite some time ago. But I think that maybe they need to be strengthened again and looked at and enforced because it is now a problem. All one needs to do is travel on the roads. You can see that. Second is, and this is kind of an interesting thing, as you guys know, on Lawyers Mall in Annapolis, which is that big open space prior to going into the Capitol, it was recently completely renovated and finally finished after years of construction. We called that the Big Dig in Annapolis because it took them, I think, 3 years to finally fix it. But there is a statue of Thurgood Marshall, rightfully so, and I believe that on the pavement it has the thresholds of accomplishments in Marshall's life. And one of the things, interestingly enough, that's missing is they do have Brown versus the Board of Education, but they don't have Harriet Elizabeth Brown versus the Calvert County Board of Education, which probably should be on there. In fact, I think it should. And it's interesting that is as important as that was in the state's history, because that case changed the pay laws so that people, no matter the way they looked, would be paid the same, despite where they taught that was not included. And lastly, one of the big issues this session, and you guys know this already, is going to be redistricting. And it would be great to get commitments from all of our colleagues that represent Calvert County, that Calvert County be made whole, namely that we have 2 resident delegates that represent just Calvert County, because we have the perfect population to have 2 delegates to just represent Calvert County. And it's long overdue that happens, long overdue. And I would like to see that happen. And so far, with the maps that have been submitted by the Democrat Party, it looks like they're going to try to chop Calvert County up more than they've ever chopped it up. And that's wrong. That's wrong. The citizens of Calvert County deserve to have representation with 2 districts that are resident districts, period. And so I ask my colleagues to support that because it's long overdue. Thank you.
Mr. President, before you move on,
Yes, Senator Jackson?
yeah, I'd like to, the legislative redistricting piece is going to be something we're definitely going to be focusing on. But the first comment by Delegate Fisher is something that during my first term, it was Delegate O'Donnell, Delegate Fisher, myself, Senators Raw and Miller, and they hired Elizabeth Brown, that task force. I tell you what, I learned so much. And I like to tout, Maryland has a very storied history, so does our country, but I like to tout that era and what she accomplished in 1937, and that is the original Brown versus Board of Education, because quite frankly, Thurgood Marshall was the attorney for the NAACP who handled that case. So, I like to tout that, and any efforts for us to find other ways to commemorate that monumental undertaking, I'm certainly on board with that. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Senator Jackson. Delegate Clark?
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I go into what I filed, I would like to say, and I would like to encourage our two senators, and obviously I support whatever they put in and bills they put in. I always support them and vote for them in the House when they come over. But what I would like to encourage them to do, alongside of the tax credit or the modifications to income tax liability for public safety workers and different things, is for them to change course a little bit, and let's start looking at giving all pensions some type of a tax credit for all senior people. I would encourage the citizens in our communities to contact the senators and ask them to please include everyone, because we're losing citizens and senior citizens out of Calvert County and St. Mary's County to Florida, Delaware, and Tennessee on a regular basis. And as opposed to picking winners and losers, as my good delegate next to me has says many times, and I agree with him, this is something that should be included for all taxpayers in Maryland. It shouldn't be winners and losers, because everybody contributes to the fund that funds all these projects. So I would encourage them to either modify or put in new legislation towards that. As far as the redistricting, I agree 100% with Delegate Fisher. I personally spoke to the speaker and her staff during the off session writing the maps. Calvert County again has been chopped up. All respect to the people that represent Calvert County now. Calvert County deserves a senator. Calvert County deserves a minimum of 2 delegates. But Calvert County's been chopped up again. I believe that our 2 senators deep down inside would support that, because as I look and see the fight and the argument that went forward for St. Mary's County to stay whole, when there was a possibility that it may be changed and go up into Charles County, and the legislative delegation in Charles County and publicly saying that they wanted to keep Charles County whole themselves, except for the way that they have some small areas that are in Prince George and stuff now. Calvert County deserves this. And I know that the Board of County Commissioners has written letters up to the state levels. I don't know that you ever received a response to them letters. Evidently not. But as always, we're being overlooked again. And our senators and our delegates need to stand up in this session and let that be known. We produce 38% of all the power that comes into the state of Maryland at Calvert Cliffs Nuclear Power Plant. We put a lot of money in the state's coffers with Cove Point. We preserve thousands and thousands of acres of land to help with climate change. and to keep farming going in Maryland. Calvert County deserves its senator and a minimum of 2 delegates. And I would hope and support, I hope that the 2 senators, our 2 senators will help, and all our delegates will fight and help to try to make a change. Do I think that's going to happen? Probably not. But I had to get that off my chest, and I wanted the public to understand that. And now to go a little bit further, as a lot of you know, I started on this board 20 years ago. So I waited this session this year to make this announcement, but I will not be seeking re-election in November. I put in 20 years. It was a hard decision, but it's time for the young people to take over and move these counties and these states the way they should be. And I've had a great time. I've enjoyed working with everybody in the delegation, all my senators, all my fellow delegates, and all the county commissioners. And it's tough for me to do, but it's time. It's time for me to move on. And with that, I would assume that'd probably be the last time I'll address this board. So thank you so much for the time, and best of luck going forward in the future, and I'll support everything you have this year. Thank you.
Well, Delegate Clark, we're sorry to hear that because, you've provided great service to this county, as you mentioned, as a commissioner and then as a delegate. And personally, I'm sorry to see you go. It takes, in Annapolis, as you gentlemen know, it takes a while to build up a reputation and to get things done. And so understanding that there needs to be transition, but also recognizing that seniority does count. And we certainly will miss you, and I hope it's not the last time you're here. We drag you in here for something, and maybe we can find something else for you to do since you'll be retired.
Well, you notice I only said I wasn't going to run for delegate.
But as far as the redistricting goes, we've written letters. I've spoken to leadership. They just, don't really respond. They've got their own agendas, but you gentlemen are absolutely right. Based on our population today, there's no reason why we shouldn't have a single senator and 2 resident delegates. But that's not unique to us. As I learned in my state travels, there are lots of districts in this state that are chopped up, and we're probably fortunate to have what we have today based on some other areas. When you look at multi-counties covered by multiple delegates, and it just makes the process a lot more cumbersome when you have to deal with a multitude of delegates and multitude of counties, and makes it hard on you all in representation. Delegate Clark represents part of St. Mary's, Senator Bailey, Senator Jackson, Delegate Jones are all representing different constituencies, and we are certainly different. I mean, we may be neighbors, but there are extreme differences in our demographics and our way of life, even though we're neighbors. And it's tough on you guys, because I know that, a lot of your districts are chopped up, and for Delegate Jones and Senator Jackson, do a great job trying to represent us, but the larger part of your district is in another area, and you have opposing issues. We want one thing and they want something else, and we're a minority in your district, so it's very hard on us. Would certainly make our lives and our political issues much more clean if we had a single senator and 2 delegates, but I'm not betting any money like Delegate Clark that that's going to happen. Things are...
Well, Senator Jackson has the toughest job. He has 3 different counties, 3 different forms of government, and 3 different constituents he sees. And that's a tough job for anyone. He does a great job with it. And, I commend him for that. He's always been very helpful. And Senator Bailey's always been very helpful, but as Senator Bailey would fight tooth and nail to make sure that St. Mary's County has its own senator, we should fight the same way for that in Calvert County. And as far as that 655 bill, I would think it would be very hypocritical to put that bill back through after we've seen and the results of of what are the proposed legislative maps. If there was a true belief in that 655 should go through, then the legislative maps would have been fixed to reflect the citizens' abilities to elect the folks that represent them. So that's pretty much all I have to say. And I thank you guys very much.
And personally, for me, 655, the process doesn't bother me as much as I think the citizens of Calvert County should determine how they elect their commissioners. And we shouldn't be told by the state how we elect our commissioners. That should be a function of our citizens. If the citizens of Calvert County decided that's the way they wanted to run our elections, I'm fine. I don't have any issues with it. It's just for me, as you all know, having delegates from Montgomery County and Prince George's County, Baltimore City, telling us how to run our elections is what bothers me. As far as the process, I don't care one way or the other. It's what we want. Not
And
to be told.
Commissioner President Hance, I've had it's interesting when you have time to think about things, you've lived somewhere for a while and you see how it works correctly, you realize that some things are worth preserving. The folks in Annapolis, and for the record, a lot of the people watching may not know, 655, its intent was to split Calvert County into resident districts whereby you would have to vote within that resident district only, not countywide, versus just having to reside in the district and run countywide. Calvert County is a small county, and everything that affects one part of the county affects the other because there's one highway going through it. We have a small population, and one of the cool things that makes this county work is the fact that our 5 commissioners have to work together because each election they must run countywide and answer to all of the voters. And as a result of that, they've worked together to preserve land. They've worked together to work on so many different things to make this great place a wonderful quality of life. And there are folks in Annapolis who want to divide Calvert County because that's how they think they can conquer it, by dividing us and pitting us against one another. And I can say one thing, over my dead body, it's not going to happen. And I'm hoping the entire delegation does the same thing. Thank you.
Absolutely. So I don't know if my colleagues have anything, or Delegate Jones.
Yes, Mr. President, just a couple of things. So I don't think any of us have heard anything about House Bill 655 or any reiteration of that coming back this year. But I understand your concern about wanting the localities to be able to make that decision, and I think that the boards of commissioners in all 3 counties feel that way. In regards to the legislative maps, I keep hearing it being said that we have the population to justify it, but each Senate district has to have somewhere, I believe, around 141,000 people in it, which Calvert does not have. And so a Senate district, we're going to have to share with some other county. I understand that there's one map that puts Calvert sharing with Anne Arundel County, and then, of course, another map that shows us continuing to share with St. Mary's and Calvert, as we have for several, for nearly a decade or so or more in the St. Mary's district. But the challenge is that we don't have the population to have a district that is only Calvert. We're going to have to continue to share with some other county. And I think given the fact that we have had good representation from Senator Bailey, and that we've had good representation previously from Senator Miller representing 2 counties, and now for Senator Jackson, I think that there was some sort of, overall desire from the state to try to keep the districts whole as they have existed. And then I get that all 3 or 4 counties have different needs. As someone who worked on the federal level, and it was solely my job to understand all needs of Prince George's plus all 3 Southern Maryland counties, I understand that we do have some unique differences, right? But ultimately, that's why we operate as a region. If we were not going to be able to be effective, or if we weren't going to have some of the same issues and same challenges and think the same ways about some things, but then there'd be no reason for having the Tri-County Council. The Tri-County Council for Southern Maryland would be defunct if they were not able to identify unique things that unify the region that we all want to fight for, that we all have a desire for. And so I understand what the numbers are, and that we're going to still have to share a district with some county. And so I may not necessarily agree with some of my colleagues on that, but I just want to state for the record, we don't have the numbers to stand alone. And so I don't particularly take issue with continuing to share with St. Mary's and with Prince George's, because we have had a solid team, and we have had good representation throughout the years with the district as it stands. And I think some parts of the districts are changing due to population growth, but the notion that it's just being carved up when it's still Calvert and St. Mary's, Calvert and Prince George's, that's my sentiment about it.
Thank you, Delegate Jones. So, Commissioner Weems, Commissioner Gadway.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. I just want to thank the delegation for this meeting today. Look forward to working with each of you in the future. And Delegate Clark, good luck, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Gadway?
To echo Commissioner Weems' comments, thank you again for all coming and participating, listening to us, and I look forward to all the other conversations that I have with each of you to help me understand all of this legislation as well. And Mr. Clark, you were one of the first people in this county that I voted for when I moved into this county, and I'm wishing you the absolute best as well.
Thank you very much.
So, wish you the best, and please don't forget us.
Don't worry.
You know, there's a lot of committees that we need people to help out on.
What? Commissioner Hart, do we still have you?
Yes, it's been on and off, but can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I want to thank everybody for coming in, and it is a difficult process. There's a lot of constituents and from a lot of different areas with different needs. So it is a very challenging process. But I want to thank everyone for coming in, and Delegate Commissioner Clark, wish nothing but the best. And look forward to talking to you many, many times about many issues, as we've always done. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Commissioner Hart. So again, just thank you, gentlemen and lady, for joining us today, and we look forward to working together in this upcoming session, and hopefully it'll be successful. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
So the next item we have on the agenda today is a proclamation. So Greg Bowen, come on down. Good, good. So some of you may recognize Greg. Greg worked for county government for 30 years. Planning and zoning, got his hands on a lot of issues that are relevant to us today. So Greg was recognized recently for all of his hard work, and so we thought we'd take this opportunity to present him with a proclamation recognizing all that work that he's done for the citizens of Calvert County. So whereas the Board of County Commissioners of Calvert County desires to recognize citizens who are dedicated to improving the quality of life in Calvert County, and whereas Greg Bowen has been an advocate for land preservation and stability for over 30 years. And whereas Mr. Bowen has been selected by the Maryland Department of Planning as a 2021 Maryland Sustainable Growth Award recipient in Leadership and Service. The Leadership and Service Award is an honor given to those for their activities and accomplishments that advance public appreciation, understanding, and involvement in promoting smart growth and sustainable communities at the local, regional, or state level. And whereas the Board of County Commissioners wishes to pay tribute to Greg's distinguished and commendable service to our community, now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Calvert County that the appreciation of all Calvert County citizens is hereby extended to Greg Bowen as he is recognized as a 2021 Maryland Sustainable Growth Award recipient by the Maryland Department of Planning. Be it further proclaimed that the Board of County Commissioners of Calvert County joins with the community, constituents, and friends of Mr. Bowen in thanking him for his significant contributions to Calvert County. Given under our hands and seal this 11th day of January 2022. So I just want to say again, you know, as people ride around Calvert County and you see all this farmland, we preserved 30,000 acres in Calvert County. A lot of that can be attributed to Greg Bowen. Had foresight a long time ago when we were very rural that we needed to protect our lands because things could happen, and that it was important that we preserve our heritage and our culture. And for that, we as a board want to thank you, Greg, and I'm glad that the state recognizes all your efforts. Thank you. We'll take a picture. You know we have to take a picture.
We got other folks that want to say something too.
Mary Beth Cook, Director of Planning and Zoning. I just wanted to take a minute to reiterate what Commissioner President Hance just said. Without Greg's forethought as Director of Planning and Zoning, our land preservation would not be what it is today in the county. And we continue to work through the programs that he instituted, not only the Ag Preservation, but Environmental Commission, the Historic District Commission, and the town centers. He was instrumental in creating the town centers so that we could develop in certain areas and preserve others. So thank you very much, Greg. Much appreciated. And I told the commissioners this morning he hired me as his deputy. So thank you for that as well. And good luck.
Greg, if you don't mind, Mark Willis, County Administrator, I'd like to say a few words also because Greg and I go now back, I guess, 21 years. And I think it was the League of Women Voters that suggested or directed that we start the Calvert County Citizens Green Team. So Greg and I did that together many years ago. And many people know that I pick a new topic every year and study it. And I was studying Lewis and Clark expedition for a year. And I was walking around the county with this book, and someone said, "Oh, you need to get with Greg." And so we started then a book club, a book reading club, and we'd meet various houses. But never in any of those discussions had we lost the sight of retaining the rural character of Calvert County. And you know when somebody's true to life about what they enjoy, what they want to accomplish when they retire after over 30 years, and then continue to do the exact same thing that they've always done. So aside from teaching me a lot along the way, hopefully we all realize that that is the overall goal of this county government, and Greg is always welcome, has been requested, is part of our effort going forward to retain the rural character. And a lot of folks may think that Greg is anti-growth. Greg Bowen is smart growth. He always has been, and that's what he taught me, and that's what we're going to try to do moving forward. So you can't get away. We know where you live. Thank you, sir. And you may move to the mic, sir, and take over.
Thank you. It's so great to see so many good friends here, people that have been part of my life for a long time. I have to say that I was at the right place at the right time. After the Pleasant Peninsula Plan was prepared, I happened to be the president of the Young Farmers when they were creating a committee to look into land preservation alternatives. And they foolishly appointed me to that committee, and that's where it all got started for me. But you know, Calvert County is a special place. Calvert County had the first land preservation program in the state. It had the first community-based land trust in the state. And I think even today we have the most land trusts for any county. We also had the first Secretary of Agriculture. And we've been pretty lucky at getting subsequent Secretaries of Agriculture. So it's been a county that's been very land preservation, agriculture, and fisheries oriented. A lot of those basic goods have always come out of Calvert County, and a lot of us want to see it stay that way. And if you fly over Calvert County, you see an awful lot of green, and that is because of the work of so many people. A lot of the core people after the Pleasant Peninsula Plan, they were farmers who were saying, we're worried about what we're losing. What can we do to get things going? So thank you. And I also want to give a plug to the county commissioners. In the last year, they've made great strides to strengthen the land preservation program. What I see on the agenda today about rural legacy makes me very excited. This is moving us in the right direction. So thank you all so much.
So, and I've admitted before, and I'll admit on camera, you know, back in the day, as a landowner, back in the day when Greg was there and they were doing all these down zonings, I think I testified at every hearing against what Greg was proposing. Right, Greg? And we had some interesting discussions, but I'm man enough to admit that Greg Bowen had better foresight than I did, because I never envisioned Calvert County would be where it is today. Not that that's all a bad thing, but you know, I was wrong. You know, this is a special place, and Greg had the foresight to see that and know what actions had to be taken to protect it, and I was dead wrong. So, but at least I got smarter with age. So, but thank you, Greg, for all you did, because a lot of this wouldn't have happened without you. Absolutely. So the next item on the agenda is a public hearing. Director Moreland.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jennifer Moreland, Department of Community Resources Director. We have 3 public hearings this morning. I'll be reading the memos for each, and then
Actually, all 3 were duly advertised. The certificate of publication is made part of the record for the hearing. Citizens were invited to call in to provide comments on any or all of the hearings. Those calling in to speak must stay on the line. We'll have an opportunity to speak after each presentation is concluded. Each of the 3 hearings will have a separate comment period following their brief presentation. Callers will then be invited to press star 9 when the floor is open for public comment on that specific item. Callers will be identified by the last 4 digits of their phone number and unmuted one at a time. They'll be asked to state their name and address and whether they are speaking as the designated representative of a group or on their own behalf. Those who are providing comment as individuals will be allocated 2 minutes. Those who are the designated representative of a group will be allocated 5 minutes. And anybody in the audience that is here to speak on these public hearings, there is a sign-up sheet to my right. Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Norris. The first one is our CDBG CARES Act funding, Round 2 program reallocations. Background, on October 2nd, 2020, the Department of Community Resources applied for a Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, from the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development, DHCD, for Federal CARES Act funding, Phase 2. Calvert County government was awarded $600,000 for rental assistance through the CDBG program. Since the award, the county was awarded an additional $1.9 million in emergency rental assistance program funds to meet the needs of our citizens. Spending ERAP funds was a priority for the state, and the county was asked to reallocate CDBG rental assistance funds to other priority projects. Discussion. Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development approved a reallocation of the unspent CDBG rental assistance dollars to the following programs: Homeless Client Case Manager and Supplies through Lifestyles of Maryland, $113,104.27. Housing Counseling with Southern Maryland Tri-County Community Action Committee, Inc., $50,000, and Vulnerable Older Adult Case Managers at the Office on Aging, $280,000. $96,895.73 was spent in rental assistance with this program before reallocations. The remaining $60,000 in funds can remain in rental assistance until another more pressing need is identified. Fiscal impact, none. No matches required. The county provides in-kind administrative support for this project. Conclusion recommendation, the department requests the Board of County Commissioners concurrence for the budget adjustment 121 and to keep the record open for 10 days. After 10 days, staff will return to the BOCC to request approval of the budget adjustment and adopt the attached resolution. Just for background, we did present this idea back in October of this year. We're very excited to have two full-time case managers for seniors for the next 2 years. This is a very vulnerable population, and we appreciate any feedback from the community and from the commissioners.
Thank you.
Okay, there's no comment, so I will be moving forward.
Ask if anybody that wishes to comment that's on the telephone call to please press *9 to raise your hand.
Okay. There aren't any callers?
There are no public callers.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. The next item is budget adjustment for,
No, we've got a
motion.
oh, that's
we
right,
gotta
you have
take
to
a
do the
little
motion.
action. And Commissioner Hart, I'm going to need you here because Commissioner Gadway stepped out of the room. So, Commissioner Weems?
Yes, sir, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion to leave the record open for 10 days.
Commissioner Hart?
Second?
I have a motion and a
Second.
second. We got you. I have a motion and a second that we hold the record open for 10 days. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries.
Thank you,
Now
Commissioner.
you can move on.
Okay. The next item is subject budget adjustment for the End Hunger Warehouse Project. Background: this fall, the Department of Community Resources coordinated an application for $565,000 of additional community development block grant CDBG funding from the Maryland Department of Housing Community Development, DHCD. This funding was for the continued construction of a 21,000 square foot commercial grade food storage and distribution center at 6021 Solomons Island Road in Huntingtown. And Hunger in Calvert County, Inc. is managing the project, and the county is the applicant. The Board of County Commissioners, VOCC, voted to approve the submission of this application on October 5th, 2021, following a public hearing, and received notice of approval from DHCD on December 3rd, 2021. On December 14th, 2021, the BOCC signed the grant agreement with DHCD. Discussion. In order to proceed with the project and continue funding, the BOCC must approve a budget adjustment and subrecipient agreement with End Hunger. Budget Adjustment 127 has been reviewed for legal sufficiency by the county's attorney's office. Fiscal impact, none. No matches required. The county provides in-kind administrative support for this project and recently provided American Rescue Plan funding for this project. The department conclusion recommendation, the department requests the BOCC's concurrence for Budget Adjustment 127 and to keep the record open for 10 days. After 10 days, staff will return to the BOCC to request approval of the budget adjustment and adopt the attached resolution.
And there are 4 callers on the line. If any of them wish to speak, please press *9 regarding the End Hunger budget adjustments for CDBG funding.
There are no speakers at this time.
Okay. Commissioner
Hi, Jennifer. This is Jacqueline. I would like to just let the record show that on January 3rd, Reverend Hahn from End Hunger did send us a letter of support, including all the letter of supports that were submitted in our initial application to DHCD and our second application to DHCD for these funds, just showing that End Hunger's support and request for approval of this budget adjustment.
Thank you, Jacqueline.
Of course.
Any other feedback from the commissioners?
So, Commissioner Gadway, you were able to hear this entire presentation?
Yes, I was.
Thank you. So, there's action.
Yes, sir.
Motion?
Yes, sir, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion to leave the record open for 10 days.
Second.
I have a motion and a second that we leave the record open for 10 days. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Director Moreland.
Okay, and now our final public hearing. This is for FY22 Emergency Rental Assistance Program Grant Agreements and Budget Adjustment 137. In May 2021, Calvert County was awarded $1,801,998 in Emergency Rental Assistance Program (ERAP) funding by the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development (DHCD) to aid Calvert County households with emergency rental assistance and related housing stability services. To date, the Department of Community Resources, in partnership with Lifestyles of Maryland, Inc. and Southern Maryland Tri-County Community Action Committee, Inc., has expended all ERAP funds for direct financial assistance. Discussion. On December 17, 2021, DHCD awarded Calvert County government with a second round of ERAP funding totaling $1,239,878. A new grant agreement with DHCD and sub-grantee agreements are required for this new round of funding for emergency rental assistance to eligible households. Due to the amount of grant funding involved, a budget adjustment with a public hearing and resolution are required by the Board of County Commissioners, BOCC, under Section 5-103 of the Code of Public Laws of Calvert County. Budget Adjustment 137 has been reviewed for legal sufficiency by the County Attorney's Office. Notice of the hearing was advertised in the Recorder and the Southern Maryland Voice for 2 prior consecutive weeks. Fiscal impact, none. No match required. The county provides in-kind administrative support for this project. Conclusion recommendation, the Department of Community Resources requests that the BOCC authorize the board president to sign the attached agreement and sub-grantee agreements. In addition, the Department of Community Resources requests the BOCC hold a public hearing, accept comment, and move to close the record and approve and adopt the resolution enacting Budget Adjustment 137.
Nobody signed up. If there's anybody on the call who wishes to speak with respect to this budget adjustment, please press *9. I'm advised there are no hands raised.
Commissioners, do you have any questions regarding this funding?
Commissioner Weems?
I do not have a question. I would like to make a motion to close the record, approve, and adopt said budget adjustment number 137 as submitted and sign the related resolution.
Commissioner Hart?
Second?
I have a motion and a second to close the record, approve and adopt Budget Adjustment number 137 as submitted, and sign the related resolution. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Director.
Hi, this is Jacqueline. I have one comment. I just can't see from Teams. I just want to make sure Commissioner Gadaway was able to recuse himself, as this is a rental assistance option, if he so chooses.
He was out
had
of the room,
stepped out
so
of the
he
room.
wasn't participating anyway.
Oh, good. I just want to make sure that's on the record, because
Yep.
I know they'll always ask me.
Thank you.
Yep, he wasn't even
Thank
here.
you. I appreciate it.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you so much, Commissioners.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is an award presentation by the Employee Recognition Committee.
Good morning, Commissioners and
morning.
ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lorraine Joyner. I'm an Executive Administrative Assistant with the Department of Community Resources. And for the next 2 days and about 3 hours, Chair of the Employee Recognition Committee. We are having our elections on Thursday, and we will be sure to update you on our new officers once the votes are tallied. I'm here today to introduce Calvert County Government's December 2021 Employee of the Month. The final EOM for 2021 and one of the 12 outstanding candidates that will be considered for Employee of the Year. Employee of the Month Award acknowledges individual excellence for superior job performance or special individual efforts in the following areas: effectiveness of public contact, respect of fellow employees, quality and or quantity of work, contributions toward improving organizational morale, and actions that improve the county's public image. Anyone can nominate a coworker for this award. Please check out the ERC webpage on the county intranet for more information. We do need a nomination for this month, so if you are within the sound of my voice and you know of a deserving coworker, please Submit your nomination before close of business tomorrow. And now, without further ado, it is my privilege to introduce our December 2021 Employee of the Month, Barbara Warner, Public Safety Grants Writer. Could you please join the commissioners? All right, then. That's the spirit. Of course they did. A little background on this award. Barbara was promoted to Public Safety Grant Writer in 2018. With the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, Barbara worked tirelessly to guarantee the county received all available federal coronavirus relief funding. She spent hours researching, tracking disbursements, services, and staffing, developing spreadsheets and forms, communicating with multiple individuals and organizations to create a spending plan to submit to the state. She collaborated with county departments and many outside entities, including the Health Department, Calvert Health, the Board of Ed, College of Southern Maryland, and the towns of Chesapeake and North Beach to assure that the entire county recouped their pandemic-related expenses. How did that work out for her? Well, because of Barbara's hard work, attention to detail, and dedication, Calvert County government received $8.4 million, and the county as a whole received a total of $15.8 million in federal COVID relief funding, along with FEMA reimbursements of $161,000 for damage caused by Tropical Storm Isaias. It is a testimony to her dogged determination that no matter how many requirements the federal government imposes, Barbara remains undaunted. While she works diligently on all the grant-related activities, Barbara still performs her job efficiently and meets many other deadlines associated with grants that are already in progress. She not only gives 100% of herself to performing her job duties, but is always willing to assist coworkers. Whatever task she's given, she strives to accomplish, always keeping in mind the best interest of the county. Barbara is an asset to Calvert County government and the community at large, and is well deserving of this recognition. The ERC is delighted to join the Board of County Commissioners in recognizing this exceptional coworker for being fiscally responsible, for maintaining the integrity of our county, for getting us the funding to help our community through a global pandemic, tropical storms, and I think soon ice and snow events, and for, she's going to be out taking pictures of trees, commissioners, and for demonstrating what we all know, that Calvert County is an awesome place to live and work. Thank you, Barbara, for all you do. Big thanks to Public Safety for taking the time to submit this nomination. And thank you, commissioners, for your continued support of the Employee Recognition Committee and for partnering with us to recognize Calvert County government's truly remarkable workforce. And I do believe that there are a couple people here that would like to say a few words about Barbara.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jackie Vaughn, Director of Public Safety. We're happy to have Barbara as part of our family. I can tell you that she is very detail-oriented to the point of doing this tropical storm where we're going out and taking pictures of trees and doing the lat and longitude of trees. That's how detailed FEMA wants their documents, and Barbara has stayed on top of that, as well as the CARES funding, the coronavirus, all the federal funding that's coming down. You know, when Barbara came on board, she came on board as a public safety grant writer to help the fire departments, and not only has she continued to do that, earning funding for our cadet program that's at the high school and SCBAs for the fire departments, waterway grants. She's continued to take care of the coronavirus funding and is staying on top of a lot of the ARPA funding. She's reading that 400-page document that Mr. Noor sent last week now, just staying on top of all the funding for that, and we're very happy to have Barbara as part of our public safety family. So thank you for recognizing her, and thank you for the ERC for recognizing her as well. We appreciate it. I'm sorry, but she had to wear her sash and her crown. We were not letting her get away without it. And I challenge the other departments. This is our third Employee of the Month for 2021 for public safety. So I challenge the other departments to recognize their great work that their employees do as well. Thank you.
She knows I'm going to pick on her. But our department works really closely with public safety, as you know, Department of Community Resources. But what I'll say about Barbara is she is, not only she's sensible and dedicated and hardworking, that's all been said, but she really brings joy to the drudgery, as you can see. Because grant work, it can be tough. It's a lot of details. And it can, at sometimes, really get dull. But she makes it fun, and she's such a great collaborative partner, and so we're so fortunate to have her. So congratulations, Barbara. Yes.
Commissioners, Mark Willis, County Administrator. So Barbara and I also go way back. My family knew her family long before I met her physically here at the county. But I'm glad to see you're coming out of your shyness with the crown and the sash and all that. So while Barbara may present this quiet personality, she is second only to Kim Gott as far as people fear her within county government, because she will not stop until she succeeds, and that's one of the great attributes that you bring to the job. So no matter where you are, you make us better, so thank you. And now I think you're going to come up here and have something read to you, maybe given to you, if Commissioner Weems hadn't put it in his pocket already.
You are paying attention.
Yes. And do you have anybody with you?
My mom's here.
Please.
Congratulations, Barbara. And you do represent so much good we have in our county employees. And as every queen deserves her crown, her sash, there's one accoutrement you are missing. It is a scepter. And in its stead, I'll give you that. And I will bow to you, madam. Please. Thank you, madam.
Hey, we have 2 empty chairs.
Oh, yeah. We have a check. We have a certificate. And a sincere thank you. And we'll have some pictures, please.
Yes, I know. Thank you.
Congratulations.
So the next item on the agenda is appointments. Deputy Administrator Vasallo.
Morning, Commissioners. We have 4 separate rounds of appointments for you this morning. I'm going to start out with the Calvert Marine Museum Board of Governors. Staff is requesting that the board reappoint Charles Jackson and John Weigel, and appoint Kelly Friedman, Lisa Sanders, Monty Suter, and Cedric White to the Museum Board of Governors. And we'll have 1 vacancy remaining following those appointments.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second that we, reappoint Charles Jackson and Dr. John Weigel, and appoint Kelly Friedman, Lisa Sanders, Monty Suter, and Cedric White to the Calvert Marine Museum Board of Governors. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
All right. Your second round of appointments is for the Housing Authority of Calvert County. And staff is requesting that the board appoint Emma Walls. Following that appointment, you'll have 1 vacancy remaining for that board.
So moved.
Commissioner Hart.
Second.
I have a motion and a second that we adopt and pass a motion appointing Emma Walls, to the Housing Authority of Calvert County. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, sorry.
Opposed? Motion carries. This is different today.
All right, so let's try number 3. So, the Historic District Commission, staff is requesting that the board reappoint William Bass, Thomas Dugan, and Robert Evans. And following those appointments, you'll have no vacancies on that board.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to reappoint William Bass, Thomas E. Dugan, and Robert K. Evans.
Commissioner Hart?
Second. Second.
I got you. So, I have a motion and a second to reappoint William Bass, Thomas Dugan, and Robert Evans. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, motion carries.
Okay. Your last appointment is from County Administrator Mark Willis. There's two sections to this appointment. The first one is that MACO has requested that you nominate a member and an alternate to serve on the Legislative Committee. MACO is the Maryland Association of Counties.
So, currently I serve on the Legislative Committee and Commissioner Hutchins was the backup. Pleasure of the board.
I can say that I would be interested, if no one else is, for the alternate, if you want to retain your position.
I'm fine.
I've got no problem taking over for the
If
Hutchins position.
If
Right.
that's, I have no problem with that as well.
Okay.
So I'm going to make,
Commissioner Hart, did you hear that discussion?
I did, yes, sir.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we retain Commissioner Hance as our representative and Commissioner Gadway as an alternate.
Second,
Second?
or no, let him second it.
Yeah, Commissioner
Sorry.
Hart seconded the motion. I have a motion and a second to appoint myself as a representative to the Legislative Committee for MACO and that delegate, I promoted you already. Commissioner Gadway be the alternate for the Legislative Committee for MACO. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Administrator Willis.
Yes, Commissioner President. The next part of this is actually, we have 19 other boards and commissions that the commissioners or their representatives sit on currently. And the list as it's there now is a good list. However, I would make a recommendation that there's one item, which is the Parks and Recs Advisory Board. My recommendation, we appoint directors or very appropriate staff to positions that I think have more time and are more directly involved and can help you in that fashion. I would recommend that we appoint Director Shannon Nazal with your consideration for the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. Commissioner President Hance, you currently sit in that position, but your pleasure, sir.
And I haven't sat very well in that position.
I did not indicate that,
Since
sir.
I got a
just-
promotion. Time only allows so much. So we have a recommendation from the administrator, and I thought Shannon's not currently on there. I thought she was. No?
The one advantage of having her be officially part of it is that she would be able to oftentimes create a quorum when we haven't had a quorum in the past. So that would keep things moving forward, and certainly she knows Parks and Recs, because if she doesn't, we might have to consider a move there. But I think we're good.
She's had to fill in for me, probably. So we have a recommendation from the administrators, an action the board would like to take.
So moved. The recommendation to have Director Nazal be our representative.
Second.
Second?
So I have a motion and a second that we appoint Director Nazal to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. And Commissioner Hart was not opposed. That was just a timing issue. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is old business. Mr. Attorney. Hey.
Daryl, could you please advance it to slide 13? I think I might owe the board some time back. So what I'm going to tell the public, my name is John Norris, County Attorney. We're back with the results of the second draft of the Police Accountability Board and Administrative Charging Committee documents. The public took your comments rather well. I'm going to start with slide 13, which highlights the comments that were received on that second draft. For the public's information, The first 12 slides give the background and the direction, as I took it from the board, and what to change for the second draft. So let's start with the highlight of comments. One of the members, on the members of the members meeting juror standards versus background checks. The recommendations I saw from the FOP suggested background checks replace the juror standards. The local chapter of the League of Women Voters suggested anyone eligible to vote ought to be eligible to serve. Criminal records ought to be considered in view of how long ago the offense was committed. Others suggested that background checks should not be done. My recommendation on this point is to leave the juror standards in. The League of Women Voters also did add a provision that we should consider, and that's making accommodation for those that are hard of hearing under the Americans with Disabilities Act. So that would be my one recommended change based on these comments.
So the board want to take these one recommendation at a time, or you want to wait till the end? What's your pleasure?
I'd be happy to wait till the end.
Wait till the end? Okay.
And my end goal today is to get some direction on what you'd like to take to public hearing, and we'd like to try and schedule that public hearing for January 25th if at all possible. So next slide, please. Thank you. On members meeting the jurors' standard English language comprehension requirement, League of Women Voters suggested that it's not necessary to specify English competency. If a person is deaf, they would be provided with accommodation. Same goes for different languages. The current draft applies the juror standard modified by the county application form instead of the juror qualification form. So that's the reading and writing provision for the test. The juror qualifications also require a person be able to read and understand English. That is expressly provided in the law, subject only to accommodation necessary to comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act. Again, I think if we adopt the change to add a ADA compliance provision in here for those that are entitled to accommodation under the Americans with Disabilities Act, I would leave the language as English being required to be understood and not make any changes with respect to English competency as opposed to a different language. Okay. Next slide, please. On members that are former law enforcement officers or LEOs, League of Women Voters would prefer 5-year separation from employment as an LEO to be eligible for to be a member of the Police Accountability Board. Local chapter of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People has said that it's not dissatisfied with a 3-year separation in the current draft, but would prefer 5. I saw there no one was opposed to 5 being the minimum years of separation, so I would recommend changing that 3 to 5. Next slide, please. On members that are former law enforcement officers, the League of Women Voters has also suggested that the draft resolution be modified to require that those members have sufficient length of service to adequately represent law enforcement perspectives. So just to put this in context, the current draft does require that they have 20 years of service to be a former law enforcement member. So I think this is trying to address a concern that there may not be sufficient members of the community who reside in Calvert County who meet some of the other qualifications we're going to talk about later that have 20 years of service. So it does leave some subjective determination by the Board of County Commissioners what is sufficient years of service. I would give the board the additional flexibility by adopting that change recommended by the LWV as opposed to what's in the current draft. Next slide, please. On the members that represent the minority population of the county, there has been a suggestion to define minorities, e.g. racial, gender, sexual orientation, disabled, etc. The LWV has asked why there is a quota of 3 minorities, and what if one individual falls into several categories? Blind, black, female person, does that adequately cover the diversity of the county? Was one of their specific comments. And I'd like them to, I'd like the public to first believe that there's a positive intent as this document's been drafted, as the various drafts have gone to public comment. Now the board has listened to the comments that have been received and made minor adjustments here and there. So I'd also like to recognize that the board wants this accountability board and the administrative charging committee to be all inclusive. There was never an intent that one person might be a quota or that any one person would be part of a quota. But there is assurances that the minority will be represented and minorities will be represented in these boards. So I think the resources, the immeasurable resources the board has spent to try and make sure that there is some provision there is notable. Next slide, please. On the term and term limits, the LWV agreed with terms being 3 years, but suggested only eligible to serve 2 full terms for a total of 6 years. And in the current draft, both the Accountability Board and the Charging Committee have 3-year terms. No one is eligible for reappointment after their 9th year of service. The reason we've written it that way, instead of saying that you will serve 2 full terms, is because we do have staggered terms. We didn't want, or the board initially did not want the knowledge to all leave at once with a charging committee or with a accountability board. So I would recommend that we keep the way it's structured so that you can have a maximum number of reappointment years. You can't be reappointed after a certain year, but change that 9 to 6. Next slide, please. On the removal of members, the FOP is recommending tightening the grounds for removal of a member by requiring the removal be based upon subsequent criminal act that would disqualify the member from appointment, violation of state ethics, or breach of confidentiality standards. Current draft gives the Board of County Commissioners discretion to remove any member on your own initiative or based on a recommendation of a majority vote of the Accountability Board when the best interests of the community or the commission would not be served by continued membership. Obviously, the way it's currently drafted does give the board more discretion. Instead of trying to identify the nuanced situations where it might be advisable that you remove someone and we don't have it, I'd rather leave it as it's drafted today. So no changes recommended there. So next slide, direction is sought on the revisions to incorporate into a third draft. It's recommended the third draft be advertised for a public hearing for 2 successive weeks in advance of the hearing. It's recommended that the board consider having an evening hearing in lieu of the standard 10:30 in the morning hearing time, and the board may choose to leave the record open for a brief period following the hearing or take action that evening. I know there has been some criticism of how long this has taken to get to this point. We were reading articles earlier this week that the regulations to bring this to fruition at the state level still have not been promulgated. They have not made their way to the state register, to the Maryland Register yet. So while it may be unfortunate that it's taken as long as it has, certainly you've gotten some good input and it's all been beneficial, and it doesn't look like we're behind the curve on this. We're actually in front of the curve.
And the goal was always to do it right and not fast. And we do have time, so we're still moving forward, so we shouldn't have any issues meeting our deadlines.
No, July 1, 2022 is when the law goes into effect, and assuming there are not changes this session as well.
Because if we can get a draft, get a final in place, you know, seeking applications and going through that process, it's probably going to take 45 days or...
We have started a list because there's been some interest from the community, but it is not a very long list when you look at how many members, 9 members. We've got 1 from each, or 2 from each of the commissioner districts, and then 2 more members for the charging committee.
But we haven't made an official request either.
No.
So these people are just stepping forward based on their current knowledge of the process, so.
Correct.
I'm anticipating that we won't have any issues finding applicants, but I could be wrong.
I believe you're probably right.
Yeah.
So if you want me to walk back through the issues, background check versus juror standards.
like everything that I heard. I do too.
At least
I have a
Commissioner
question, Mr. President.
Hart?
Yeah, I have a question on the what is the difference with the background check and the jury standards? Because there's two different opposing views there. So what's the discrepancy?
So the juror standards is one that's adopted in the state code that gives the minimum requirements for a person to serve as a juror. There are disqualifying factors for felonies. Essentially, any crime that has a potential sentence for more than 1 year or more, and you've not received a pardon for that crime, would disqualify you from being a juror. Background checks, depending on how that is structured, could be identical or it could be different, but it's not nearly as inclusive as the juror standards with respect to written and verbal competencies.
So in your opinion, is the jury standards a more stricter standard than the background check?
Well, I look at it this way. If this is a issue that goes to the charging committee, and the charging committee is reviewing the actions of a law enforcement officer in the context of a specific situation, that is analogous to being before a jury. And so I thought it would be more appropriate that you have the juror standards apply rather than try and adopt a background standard, background check standard.
Okay. Okay.
And then, Mr. Attorney, if you do a background check, then you've got to determine what is grounds for exclusion, correct?
Correct.
And there are different levels of background checks too, I believe?
There are, yes, we've gone from anywhere from a case search, which has gotten more difficult recently, to a full fingerprint nationwide background check.
So was there any comments for those that supported a background check at what level of background check that we should require, or what would exclude an individual from participating?
Now, this is my recollection of the comments received. They had identified what they saw as shortcomings in the juror standards, but I do not recall anyone identifying what would be an appropriate standard for a background check.
It's my understanding that having the juror standards, I like that as a concept because it removes any possible influence from anybody else locally, because the juror standards are established by a different body. But with the juror standards, to find out if there is going to be, if the person qualifies, there is going to have to be a type of background check to find out if the person meets juror standards. So to me, it's the best of both worlds. We find out if the person is eligible just simply based on the juror standards. And obviously backgrounds are going to have to be done in order to accomplish it to some degree.
Correct. The concern is of some might be that those background checks could not be a basis for failing to appoint someone or excluding someone, but they would be needed to inform whether or not they met the juror standards. Correct.
Mr. President,
Commissioner Weems?
just a point of process. Are we going to vote individually on this topic now, or comprehensively if everyone's?
We can do whatever if there's a motion to adopt all the recommendations and that motion passes, there's no need to do them individually. If a motion is made to adopt them in entirety and a commissioner has an issue and raises that issue, then I think we should take them individually. But if there's consensus, I don't know if there is, but if there is consensus on all the recommendations, then we could do that in that simple format.
Sure. No, I will, sir.
So can
please, absolutely.
So today there was a lot of reference to a single organization's comments. For the record, you received other comments, but they all followed that same line, which is the reason why one organization was sort of identified? How was that? Just so the public understands that
Right.
we didn't just solicit or we only heard from one group.
No.
And-
Certainly.
and John,
Yes, sir.
please, sir, if I may, along those lines, it's just like the topic we just discussed. There were public comments that there shouldn't be anything, correct?
Correct.
So, you
Correct.
know, I just wanted to, for the record, state that
Mhm.
before you answer.
Yeah, we've tried to be as open and transparent in this process as possible. So all of the comments that were received are still on the calvertcountymd.gov/PAB for Police Accountability Board webpage. The comments seem to come in from the organizations and then be parroted to some degree by their representatives. So yes, we did receive a number of different comments. These are representative of those that I thought were most notable. But yes, there were some who said there should be no background checks. There were some who said there shouldn't be a police accountability board. But the state law requires that that unfunded mandate be adopted and passed by the local jurisdictions.
So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted
No.
people to understand that.
No, point taken.
Yeah.
And yes. Mr. President?
Yes,
I-
sir.
I'd like to make a motion that we go ahead and take counselors' recommendations comprehensively for this third draft moving forward.
Second.
So Commissioner Hart, did you hear the motion? Commissioner Hart? I know he said we've been fading in and out. I just want to make sure.
Sure, no, absolutely.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes. Did you hear that motion and second?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second that we adopt the recommendations of council in entirety. Is there any discussion on that motion?
No, I'm just looking for clarity on the two things, but it sounds like that the jury standards encompass the background checks, from what I can understand. So, the other side sounds like it could be a little vague going into what background checks you're doing. So it seems like there's a lot more clarity on the jury standards.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
So with the board's permission, this is not the end. This is the beginning of the end. We'll advertise a public hearing for the 25th of January. We have reserved a room at the Harriet Elizabeth Brown Community Center for that evening, beginning at 7 p.m. if that suits the board. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And that, like I said, this is the beginning of the end. People can still provide comments. If they provide comments between now and then, we make them part of the record. And anything that was received that night, the board will obviously hear.
So Commissioner Hart, I don't know if you can see us or not, but there was a nodding of heads agreeing to the 7 p.m. hearing for this. So are you okay?
No, my video is frozen.
That's okay.
So,
So I just want to check then, if you're in agreement that we believe this, I think the consensus is for a 7 p.m. hearing on this last draft.
yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I can't see you either,
Could
so
you
I just
remind
want
us
to
of the
make
date
sure.
on that again, please?
January 25th is your next meeting date. It is a Tuesday, 2 weeks hence, and 7 p.m. at the Harriet Elizabeth Brown, 901 Dares Beach Road.
Thank you.
So we'll try to get that word, well, we will definitely get that word out, but anybody listening today, you've heard 7 p.m. on January the 25th at Harriet Elizabeth Brown. It's the next opportunity to make comment on this, hopefully, final draft, but whatever it is.
Public hearing draft.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next item under new business, Department of Planning and Zoning, application to expand Calvert County's rural legacy areas. Director.
Good morning, Commissioners. Mary Beth Cook.
Morning.
Director of Planning and Zoning. With me is Ron Marney, our environmental regulator, and he's going to take us through the memo.
Good morning, Commissioners. Subject here is the application to expand Calvert County's rural legacy areas. Background, the Department of Planning and Zoning partnered with Southern Maryland Resource Conservation District, RC&D for short, to expand preservation efforts in Calvert County. This partnership involved RC&D's management of the Calvert Creek's rural legacy area. RC&D is experienced in working with state programs and partnering them with the Readiness Environmental Protection Initiative, REPI for short, which provides matching funds for preservation efforts in the overlay area. This partnership will effectively double preservation funding for the Calvert Creek's rural legacy area and achieves this at no cost to the county. The partnership was approved by the Board of County Commissioners at their December 10th, 2019 meeting. Discussion. The Transferable Development Right, or TDR Committee, at the direction of the Board of County Commissioners, began looking into efforts to improve or expand land preservation efforts as part of that effort, and expansion of Calvert County's North Calvert and Calvert Creek's rural legacy areas was proposed. The expansion focused on Tier 4 properties of adequate size to participate in the rural legacy program. The expansion further focused on areas within the priority preservation area and lands contiguous with the existing rural legacy areas. Addition to the rural legacy areas will not negatively impact these properties and serves only to provide the option to participate in the rural legacy program. The expansion was approved by the Agricultural Preservation Advisory Board on December 6, 2021. The expansion must also be approved by the Board of County Commissioners in order to facilitate the expansion. Planning and Zoning has coordinated this with RC&D and is seeking to incorporate the expansion into their fiscal year 2023 Rural Legacy Grant application. Fiscal impact. There is no fiscal impact for the expansion of the rural legacy area. Conclusion and recommendation. Staff requests Board of County Commissioners approve to expand Calvert's rural legacy areas and authorize the Board President to sign the letter endorsing RC&D's application.
So, Commissioners, as I stated this morning, this does not in any way affect property rights because the properties are already in Tier 4, they are in the FFD, so unless they choose to preserve their property, there are no property rights being taken away.
Just for clarity.
Yes.
Just makes them eligible for funding if they were desired to preserve their property.
That's correct.
Gives them another tool.
Yes.
Does not change their zoning or anything, density, nothing. Just so we're all crystal clear to the public.
That's correct.
Questions, discussion?
No, I wanted to clarify that because, yes, that's been a concern of property owners that I've spoken to, and yes, just want to make that abundantly clear.
Thank you.
What Commissioner President just said. That's all.
And there's criteria for the program. We just can't designate anywhere as rural legacy area. So there's already established criteria that makes an area eligible. What you've done today is just highlight and designate those areas to expand the rural legacy, as I said, which gives you another tool to preserve property if a landowner so desires. We can't say that enough.
Yes.
Thank you.
To reduce the emails and the
Yes.
phone calls. And the newspaper reports.
And if people have questions, they can feel
Yes.
free to call us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. President, I'd like to
Director
make a
Gateway?
motion
Sure.
to approve the expansion of Calvert's rural legacy areas and authorizing the board president to sign the letter endorsing RC&D's application.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second to expand the rural legacy areas as proposed by the Department of Planning and Zoning. So discussion on that motion. Commissioner Hart? Only because I can't see you. Just want to make sure. All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was painless so far. We just did that 2 days ago, so I will let him speak. So the next item on the agenda, finance and budget. FY23 staff recommended capital improvement plan for the Board of Education. Good morning.
Good morning, ladies.
Morning. Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Veronica Atkinson, Capital Projects Analyst with Finance and Budget. Since Commissioner Hart isn't here, I can read the memo, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
The Department of Finance and Budget and the Board of Education will present a review of their proposed FY 2023 six-year capital improvement plan, or CIP, to the Board of County Commissioners. Discussion. Finance and Budget reviewed the Board of Education's FY 2023 through 2028 six-year CIP staff recommended budget requests totaling $95,851,850. This amount reflects a 6% decrease from the FY 2022 to FY 2027 six-year adopted budget. Another change is the prior six-year CIP, FY 2022 through 2027, projected the design costs for the replacement of Northern Middle to begin in FY 2025. The new projections for Northern Middle's replacement now have the bulk of the design costs moving up into FY 2024. The costs for construction remain in the same years. Fiscal impact. Fiscal impact for the Board of Education six-year CIP proposed budget reflects funding from the state of $47,753,100. This leaves $48,098,750 to be funded by the county over the 6 years. The county funding portion is broken out in pay-go or general fund, $1 million to, debt or bond, $36 million, and excise tax, $10.5 million. Again, the total's $48,098,750. Conclusion recommendation. This presentation is to prepare the BOCC for the six-year capital improvement plan costs for the Board of Education and to seek the BOCC's direction on those projects. Okay. So we'll go through some of this. This presentation will be the first of 6. The next 6 board meetings with each will have each functional department will present their FY23 six-year CIP with emphasis on the projects in FY23. The emphasis on FY23 is important because this is the only year that is adopted by the commissioners when the budget is adopted. The other 5 years are used for planning purposes only. Joining me today to support the BOE's presentation and give project details is Shoshita Warner, Director of School Construction. This slide goes over the proposed presentation of the agenda. So we will review the BOE's six-year CIP projects and a breakdown of the county versus the state's support, that's funding support. We'll review each project with a focus on FY23, and then we'll wrap up the presentation with a big picture review of FY23 and how each of the functional departments financially support our total FY23, sorry. Next slide. So this slide also shows the breakdown of the Board of Education's funding, the state versus the county. The FY23 budget is $19,037,350. The county support of that is $7.9 million. The state support is $11 million. The FY23 total is $95,851,850. The county support is $48 million. The six-year state support is $47.7 million. I'll now hand the presentation over to Sheeta to review each of the projects.
Thank you. Good morning, or good afternoon, Commissioners.
Afternoon.
So what I'd like to do is, I'd like to do this a little bit differently. I know that our focus really needs to be on the FY23. So between this slide, which is slide 4, and slide 5, I'll kind of go through the FY23, focus on those, and then we will then look at 24 through 28, if that's okay. I think that probably makes sense.
Can I just ask one question before you start?
Absolutely.
Based on what we've seen with increases in cost,
Yes.
have you had, because some of these items have been in the CIP for 2 or 3 years, have you adjusted those based on what we're seeing now? These aren't old numbers, right?
Right. What we do is we always build in an escalation, and yes, we have adjusted them. For example, Northern Middle School has certainly gone through an adjustment process. Some of the other projects, in terms of the HVAC, roof replacement, yes, we've looked at what those prices are and made adjustments accordingly. If we need to reduce the scope a little bit, we've done a little bit of scope adjustment as well. So it's been a combination of those
I
things.
assumed you had done that. I just want to make sure my assumptions are correct because we've seen a significant, much more than we've always used an escalator factor, but that's out the window now.
Absolutely.
So
Yes, yes.
just want to know that we're working with actual estimates.
We are. One thing too that I want to say, with new construction is that the way the state participates, they do a 3-year average, like the cost per square foot that they participate in for projects when they fund them, the year that funding is locked in, they get the industry average over the previous 3 years. That industry average obviously has been going up. So the cost per square foot participation is a little bit higher, so that's a positive thing. They certainly look at that, so we always have to keep those types of things in consideration. So we will start with the construction piece, FY 2023.
Just, Sheeta, I hate to interrupt,
Oh,
Mr.
yes.
President, I hate to interrupt.
No.
On that point, I understand you're saying that they take a 3-year average before, but what if when it goes out to bid, the person says that's unrealistic?
Yes, I agree with you that 3-year average is always going to be a little bit behind because the current year costs certainly are probably realistic. The previous 2 years, as we've seen right now, could definitely be very low costs. We certainly had a huge spike. So unfortunately, what us school districts have to do is, we may have to look at value engineering options or other forms of funding. Like, we sort of got caught with that with Beach Elementary, so that's a good example. Now, it can have the reverse effect, which we had a couple of years ago, where the cost per square foot participation from the state, because the market was going down, we were actually getting more money. So, it can certainly have positive and negative effects, and we just have to react
my
to them.
experience, and not to cut you off, is that it typically doesn't go that way. Typically, it's another request for additional funding. And then what happens is well, you've already started this piece and you've started that piece. And so now the ball's already rolling downhill. So the board feels obligated to keep funding. And you hear me every year talk about my cautionary tale about starting projects that we're going to have a hard time completing. Aren't we almost averaging a school now about every couple of years?
We have been averaging a school every 3.5 years. So it's been spread out over about a 3.5 year period.
And you remember the 90s, the cautionary tale about doing one every year, how difficult that was. And now with building costs being, gosh, what are they, over 30% more or what have you? It's an astronomical number. Wouldn't we be a little smarter to kind of slow down and especially with a project we haven't started and wait for this not to be so violent?
I don't know if construction costs are necessarily going to take enough of a nosedive, whereby waiting, we're necessarily getting better pricing. The other thing is that I'll go into today is that we actually have the opportunity to tap into a different program to be able to start earlier on Northern Middle School. And if we wait too long, we don't have access to that funding anymore.
But it doesn't seem like it offsets. Seems like we're at the same percentages we always have been, isn't it?
No, actually, our percentage has gone down. We used to be at a 53% state participation and 47% local participation. It's actually gone to 56 and 44 now. So the county percentage is a little bit less, and the state is actually now beginning to participate in design and furniture, fixture, and equipment costs. So it would really make sense for us to leverage those participations, while we can, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Continue.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, so if we start on this slide, the two projects that are highlighted here are Beach Elementary School and Northern Middle. Our first priority, of course, is Beach. As you know, we've broken ground on the Beach project. The prior funding column that you see of the 23,855 includes $10,666,000 in prior state funding towards construction. The remaining prior funding comes from the local side. This includes funding for feasibility study and design costs, as well as prior funding towards construction. So FY 2023 marks the final round of funding that we'll request for this project. Of the $10,814,250 that you see in the construction row, $4,147,250 is the portion being requested from the county. The remaining balance is coming from the state and ESSER 3 funding. We're also requesting, as you can see, $1.6 million in funding from the county for furniture, fixtures, and equipment, or FFE. Because the beach project was approved by the state under the previous funding mechanism, design and FFE expenses were paid up to 100% by the county. So this project was locked in under that mechanism, so that cost is 100% paid by the county at this point. This will change for future projects, and I've already kind of alluded to that a little bit, but I'll go into it a little bit more when we get to Northern Middle. So going to Northern Middle, the prior funding in the amount of $1,825,000 that you see in the prior funding column was really for the wastewater treatment plant project on the Northern High, Northern Middle campus, as well as funding required for the Northern Middle feasibility study. So $848,000 of this previous funding came from the state towards that wastewater treatment plant project. Northern's CIP requests start in FY 2023 and conclude in FY 2027. Starting this upcoming fiscal FY 2023 year through FY 2024, $500,000 and $900,000 respectively have been requested as set-asides from the county to deal with any potential emergency repairs at the school. This money would roll into the construction funding allocation if not used. When I was before you last year for the CIP presentation at the request of the county, we deferred design for Northern Middle School until FY 2025 due to budgetary constraints. Since then, there have been 3 new developments that are positive. Firstly, like I just mentioned a few minutes ago, our state to local share has gone up starting in FY 2023 from 53% state participation up to 56% state participation. Secondly, as I said earlier, the state will now participate in design funding and eligible FFE funding at the same 56% rate. What that eligible FFE funding is, we don't know yet. They have not determined it. So it's not necessarily that all of the furniture, fixture, and equipment that we need for a project, they'll participate at the 56%. They're going to come up with an eligibility list. So it may skew a little bit, which I'm sure it will. But at least they're participating, a little bit. Thirdly, a new program from the state known as the Build to Learn Act, or BTL, allows Calvert County Public Schools to leverage eligible state funding towards design and construction for a project. So as a result, we're actually able to utilize some of this state funding to start design for Northern Middle School in FY24 instead of waiting till FY25. So our plan is to borrow against that money to start design earlier. And then at that point, the rest of the money we can utilize towards construction. And I'll go into that a little bit more. So in FY 2024, the only funding that will be requested from the county will be $900,000 in set-asides. Everything else is really coming from that Build to Learn Act funding from the state. In FY 2025, the county request will be $350,000 needed for lead services associated with the Northern Project and $4,027,000 in construction funding. The remaining funding will be requested from the state as a combination of Build to Learn Act funding and CIP funding. So of the $23,099,199 that you see there in FY 2025, $19,072,199 will be requested from the state. So the bulk of the county funding is divided up over FY 26 and 27, and really in 27, we'll be requesting our last portion of funding for the project. But essentially, the gist of what I'm saying is that having the Build to Learn Act money available to us at this point, we can actually forward fund most of Northern Middle School through state money rather than county money. So it kind of flips the picture, and we believe this is a win-win because with escalation, pulling that project forward, we think is a better way to go.
Except for us, it locks us into the project.
Well,
because you can't stop once you start.
That is true. However, I think so I guess there are a couple of things. One, certainly Northern Middle has had issues and has needs. We did have within the CIP the project pushed out. And so what we've been able to do by leveraging this funding is keep the county CIP dollars where we've always assigned them during those years. It is true that we would be starting earlier and locking in, but if we were, I'm not sure that Northern Middle, with the issues that it has, could be pushed out further and further, because it certainly has some critical failures that are looming. So it just allows us to, really not have to lock the county in, and making that commitment earlier. It is true that there is a commitment. However, your funding would be locked in when it was always requested to be locked in.
And what we're facing is the same thing that you're facing, that these increased costs are playing havoc with our CIP. So, if we lock into this project, that's going to impact your other CIP projects. And it's just going to push them further and further out. So not just for us, but for you, it's about prioritizing your projects as a whole. I mean, I'm just saying that as Mike likes to say, a cautionary tale that, if we lock into this, it's going to affect your other projects, because if costs are up 30%, that means 30% of our CIP's got to go away in the 6-year plan. So what are you going to give up to get that school?
Well,
and I don't need that answer today.
I understand.
Trying to relay,
Sure.
And you already know, I'm just trying to relay the situation that we're in and making sure that my fellow commissioners, and I'm sure they already have figured out, you kind of push this project up a little bit because the state's going to pay, but that locks us in. for
And
20-some
Mr.
million
President,
dollars.
I agree with you 1,000%. My cautionary tale would be, and I'm not I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know another time in U.S. history that it's been more expensive to build than it is today. And I think we should keep that in the forefront that, there's needs, wants. What can we do to mitigate things until that cost comes down? I just cannot perceive that costs will remain this high. It would stifle every government in this country. No one can continue at this pace.
And Commissioner Hart, I don't want to derail this discussion. My comments that I just made, I was going to make at the end anyway. But, I certainly want her to finish her presentation, go through the whole CIP, because today we are not adopting the CIP. We're just hearing a presentation, but just so she understands what I'm sure she already understood, there are going to be some big decisions coming, and this is going to certainly impact the school board CIP.
Right, and certainly as far as adopting the CIP, what we're talking about with Northern Middle does not affect the FY 2023 CIP because there are no, other than the emergency set aside of the 500,000, that funding would start,
But it could
next
for us.
year.
It could for us. Maybe not for you, but for us, it could affect the CIP as we move forward because we have to now plan that those dollars are already committed. And as we look through what we're going to push, that means, $11 million is already committed in those years, and we have a cap of 30 or 24. So you're going to eat half that money in those 2 out years based on where we are today. So just for us, it's much more significant than it has been in the past.
Sure. Right, absolutely, yeah.
So I'm sorry, but you can continue.
Okay, well,
And Shishita, this will be a common theme for all.
Everybody.
9.
Right.
This isn't just.
No, it's not just you.
Yeah.
It's for all of our CIP.
Right. I think, where we're a little bit different is that we do get that, about half of our money from the state. So certainly in terms of getting, it's basically 50 cents on the dollar. So there's certainly a little bit more benefit. And of course, I'm being, prejudiced when I say this.
Absolutely.
In terms of a school project, because, it certainly impacts, a lot of staff, a lot of student, a lot of population that I know is very important to the commissioners. And then having a lot of this funding be available from the state, it does make things, I think, to me, it I think provides a little bit of an advantage to be able to incorporate these types of major school projects, especially with, potential sources of other funding coming in.
Right, but if those construction costs, and I don't know what the number is, if it's 30%, that's almost a third. So that means a third of the projects we have on the books have got to go somewhere.
I will say that one of the things that, I've done with Veronica is and I've mentioned this before, we basically have a kind of a bottom line, a ceiling essentially. And I always try to never be above that ceiling. So, we do whatever we can to try to massage our projects and push priorities out, as we've done in the past.
And we appreciate that.
So, that's one thing that we always do. We always continue to do it. At the end of the day, obviously, you have to make a decision as far as your CIP. So we'll certainly work with you. But, that's basically what I can say at this point. So that pretty much wraps up this particular slide. We can go to the next slide at this time. So here is actually where all of our maintenance and the systemic renovation type projects across our schools are captured. They're captured on slide number 5 and then slide number 6. So here, what I will do is just quickly go over the FY 2023 projects, and then, once I do that, then we will go back and look at the out years. So, couple of things that I wanted to mention in terms of the in terms of these slides is you guys were already aware of the letter of support, so I think you're kind of familiar with the FY23 projects. The first project that you'll see in the FY23 column is Calvert Elementary School. And I want to just kind of give you an idea of this $1,389,180 that you see here. So of that, $120,000 is actually still parked for a new well. And I'll go into that a little bit, but the balance of the funding requested is actually from the state for the upcoming HVAC project in the amount of $1,269,180 goes. As far as the well replacement goes, we're currently in conversations with county staff about the possibility of extending the county water service on Dares Beach further east to connect Calvert Elementary and Calvert Country. But I'm not sure whether that is something that is really doable in the near future. So we've had issues with the existing well. We continue to have issues. This well serves Calvert Elementary and Calvert Country. So we are requesting this funding from the county within the current CIP so we can potentially deal with this situation. So that wraps up Calvert Elementary. I'm going to talk about the next project in FY23. Which is the CTA project, and that's the $1,585,000 that you see. This is for re-roofing of the 1970 section, and just to let you know, the funding from the state is through a Healthy School Facility Fund grant, and we have actually been approved for that money from the state. So the county allocation would be $731,000 of that $1,585,000 that you see there. I would like to go to the next slide, please, so I can finish the FY23 portions. So the next project that you'll see if you scan down to FY 2023 is the Plum Point Middle School HVAC project. And this dollar value that you see, the $2,360,920, is made up actually of several projects and pots of money. So I'm going to break it down so that it's easier to understand. The largest chunk is the HVAC piece, and this is actually comprised of state funding in the amount of $1,895,920. The local funding for that project that we are requesting this year is $375,000. The Board of County Commissioners had already approved a portion of the local allocation in the FY 2022 budget for that project. Additionally, in FY 2023, we're also requesting $90,000 in funding for design services for a storefront and skylight replacement project at Plum Point Middle. This $90,000, because the state is participating in design, will be divided up between the state and local governments. So the local allocation will be $39,600 of that. Moving on, the next project in FY23 is stormwater management. And these are repairs at multiple facilities, $175,000. We move on next to Sunderland Elementary, the partial HVAC project. And this is one of our attempts to try to do the work that is critical now and push the rest of the work later because it impacts the Board of County Commissioners CIP. So that was one of the projects where we are actually replacing the chiller, condenser arrangement, and a rooftop unit. And we're getting part of that funding through the Healthy School Facility Fund, which we've gotten approval for. So the county allocation would be $246,600 of that 563 that you see there. The last project in FY23 is Windy Hill Middle School. This is for money for design services to replace the chiller at Windy Hill Middle School. And the funding request for this project will be in FY 2025 that you see there. Again, it's partial state and county participation for both design and construction.
So I know we've had this discussion before, but between the two of us, it looks like we could hire an HVAC designer and save some money, because it seems like we spend a fortune in design. Have we ever had that discussion internally about Veronica?
No. No,
What do you
Commissioner,
think?
not that I'm aware of. You are correct, the design cost. We've gone down this road before. With the schools, they're actually multi-level in most cases, and that's actually a huge system that has a lot of components for operational. Our systems are a lot smaller. We're usually one-offs with heat pumps, rooftops. Hers, she's dealing with chillers, boilers, and actually an energy management system on top of it that actually controls that whole system. So there's a lot more components to hers than there are to ours. But we've never discussed hiring someone to design our HVAC. I know that on the county side, our HVAC tech is a master HVAC technician. So that helps a little. He had to go through some extra schooling and testing to become a master, but he wouldn't be able to design something along the lines of what she needs.
And I don't know what's needed, you know.
Sure, and I
but
can talk to that a little bit if that helps. So in terms of any of our projects that get state funding, they have to go through the Department of General Services design and submission requirements. So there are a lot of energy modeling calculations, electrical calculations that are required and that are part of the submission in order for the state to approve that project. So essentially, there are a lot of components that need to be part of that design process that are required from us, and those are handed down from the state. So that is true of really every single project where the state participates. Now, projects that are smaller, where there is just county participation, yes, we can absolutely, and a lot of times we do, go directly to an HVAC contractor. If we've got, say, just a unit here or there that we're replacing, we can certainly do that in-house, and we do. And that will not require design. But for anything where there's state participation, we have to go through a very specific process.
Sorry, I digress.
Mr. President.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Hart.
Mr. President. So we go through this every year, same thing, millions of dollars out for design. And I understand the state, once they put their input in it, they have their requirements. I completely understand that. But there must be a company that we're reaching out to, or the state, or schools reaching out to for this design. Why would we not get one of those under contract that we work with that would give, we go out to bid for so many other things. Why wouldn't we go out to bid for one of these companies to handle this to where maybe we could get a better rate or because they are picking up multiple contracts from us? I mean, you know, I hate saying buying in bulk, but why wouldn't we reach out instead of every time basically just going out to bid? And let's be honest, right now, I mean, government money has always been viewed as guaranteed. We don't get the best deal that private industry gets.
I could speak to that too. We have a 3-year contract that we let out for design for CIP projects, and we require submissions. We just went through this process. We had 79 submissions. We shortlisted and interviewed about 15 firms, and then selected 4 MEP firms, 2 civil engineering firms, 3 architectural firms to work on CIP projects. The way that we go about that is, one of the things that we look at is their hourly rates. That's one of the areas that we look at. And whenever we look for a proposal from a design firm, we have a budgetary number. However, if a firm is not going to be able to make that budget, we will go to the second firm that's on that list. And if that doesn't work, we'll go to the third firm. So we have that in place already, and we go through that process every 3 years.
And is that for individual projects, or when you're approaching them, do you say, this is for all of our CIP requests?
We do it for the entire pool. So it's not for individual projects, but we have to develop a budget for how much that design is anticipated to be. So that's what that number is. In some instances, it gets to be smaller. And then in other instances, if it's larger, then we will negotiate and cut that fee back through that firm.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's see. So I think that covers the FY23. What I'd like to do now is if we could go back to slide 5, the previous slide. Okay, thank you. And at this point, I will go ahead and cover the out years at that point. So the first project, and we're kind of bouncing a little bit. Let's see. Let me just find my place here. Okay, this is slide 5. All right. Okay. So one of the things that I wanted to bring to your attention as we developed our CIP this year is, in addition to our systemic renovation projects, we heard quite a bit from activities directors at high schools. And so part of the process starting this year was that in early 2021, at the request of Dr. Curry, Mr. Tony Navarro, along with student services and the supervisor of athletics, met with the principals and activities directors at all 4 high schools to prioritize athletic facility improvements. So in July of 2021, Mr. Navarro shared these findings with Dr. Curry, and as a result, we've included several of the system recommendations within our CIP, namely the Northern High School stadium visitor bleachers and construction and renovation of field houses at all 4 high schools. So basically, there was a prioritization list that was developed. The prioritization list was vetted to see what needs to be included in the CIP, where do we need to actually incorporate some funding within the facilities and maintenance budget for long-term maintenance of fields, and then, in terms of lighting projects at stadium fields, where does that come out of? So it was essentially a prioritization list, and we've begun to incorporate some of those CIP recommendations. So you'll see some of that in these out years. Now, I will say that you're not going to see the Northern High School stadium visitor bleachers listed in the CIP because we actually have been able to garner some savings on one of our previous projects that we're going to just roll right into in order to fund that project. So we've got the design documents for that ready at this point, and we'll be bidding that out. So I'm going to start with Appeal Elementary School because we're going to go ahead and just go row by row. And I think the reason why this makes sense is so you can just kind of see some of the needs on a per school basis. So at Appeal, we see in FY26 and 27, $30,000 and $300,000. This is essentially for HVAC related project in the original building, as well as the North Pre-K wing. If we go down to the next row where we have a project, it's the Brooks Administration Building. We've got a couple of projects planned for the Brooks Building. We have pushed these out over the years, but this does include some HVAC work at the perimeter offices, replacement of the windows, which are original to the building, and installation of an elevator, because we do not have an elevator in that building at this point, and one is certainly needed. So that's a combination of the funding needed for that. Next, we'll go to Calvert Elementary School. I already talked about the needs for the HVAC and the well in 2023. The other project that you see there is in FY 2028. This is way, way, way out, but we want to actually do a study. Right now, we've got obviously an HVAC project there, but we are wanting to study Calvert Elementary School a little bit further in the out years as part of a larger potential study for that would impact needs at Brooks and potentially, maybe a future project where we might be looking at the needs of Calvert Elementary in terms of either a, fuller renovation project or a replacement project, potential opportunities for that building. Perhaps it could be captured partly as an annex. So those are some very, very kind of 10,000 foot level type of a study that we want to be able to do for that particular building. Moving on to Calvert High School, that's the next item that you see. And you see in FY24, let's see, Calvert High School, actually I'm not, in FY25, 26, and 27, we have money allocated for design of renovations required to the existing field house. And then we also in FY 2026 have the sewage pump station replacement. We've got some money allocated for that. Moving on to Huntingtown Elementary School, in FY 2028, there is a project for the partial roof replacement. We've got some design services allocated for that. Again, this roof replacement project would include funding that would be split between the county and the state. The county funding would be in the amount of $576,000. At Huntingtown High School, in FY 2025, we have funding requests to resurface the oval running track and the field runways, and then $250,000 needed to replace the chiller. This is one of those projects where we would not be requesting any design fees because we would just do a replacement in kind of that chiller. So that's an example of a smaller project where we can just take care of that through the local funding. And then in FY 2028, for a future field house renovation project, we are requesting money for a design for the renovations of that. The next project that you see is Mary Harrison Performing Arts Center. This is an HVAC project for the auditorium and some other spaces that were not captured as part of Northern High School. They were basically kept intact. Then we move on to Mill Creek Middle School. This is another HVAC project that would happen in FY 2027. So you see some design and funding for that. However, again, much of that funding will come from the state in the form of almost $1.6 million. The last project on this particular slide, actually the second to last project, is Mount Harmony Elementary School. You see the prior funding in the $1.573 million. This was an HVAC project that's already been done. At this point, the next item that you see for Mount Harmony is really, we are looking at a feasibility study and a potential renovation project for that school. It's certainly a very old facility. It's, it's got additions from 4 different generations. There's still some open space, and, the building isn't sprinklered. It's got a lot of issues in terms of just circulation, et cetera. So we are looking at that particular school as the next school that we would be considering after Northern Middle School. That would be the next school that would be in our CIP to study. We lastly, on this particular sheet, have a request in FY27 for a small project at Mutual Elementary School that's HVAC for the 1988 wing of that building for $150,000. So we can move on to the next slide, slide 6, and I will cover the rest of the projects that you see in the maintenance section. So Patuxent Elementary, we've got an HVAC project there that's needed, as well as a re-roofing project. So we show in FY 2024 and 25 funding allocated for HVAC, and then in 25 through 2027 is actually replacement of the roofing and some clear story windows that have really, they're starting to lose their seals and are a constant source of leaks. Moving on to Patuxent High School, in FY 2024 and 2025, we have some funding allocated for design of a new field house at Patuxent High School. This particular, the cost for the field house, we anticipate requesting just $350,000 in FY 2025 for the field house, because we do have some excess funds that I was mentioning before from a project currently that we can roll over to fund the Northern High School Stadium visitor bleachers, and then the rest of the funds can account for some of the costs for the Fieldhouse project. We also have some stormwater management repairs that we need to do at Patuxent High School, and then lastly, a roofing replacement project for that building.
Can I interrupt you real
yes.
quick? The money that you want to reapply to another project, that would be a budget adjustment, correct?
Correct, yes.
And that would be a significant budget adjustment?
It
over
would-
$150,000?
It would be, yes.
So you would get, commissioners, you would get the approval on that. We would bring that to you before we would move that money from one project where she doesn't need it into a new project.
So how much money is that? You spent it twice.
Spent it twice?
I've heard 2 different projects you're going to use leftover money for. So how much money's left over?
Well, right now, I don't quite know because we're finishing that project
You just
up.
spent it on 2 projects, but you don't know how much it is?
No,
You're
that's
better
not
than
what I'm
that.
saying. What
You're
I'm
better
saying
than
is,
that.
what I,
She spent it on 2 different projects, but she don't know how much it is.
no, what we have is, we're currently finishing up an HVAC project at Southern Middle School. And this summer, we will actually finish that up. So once we're completed with that, then we will know, because we will have no more needs for any kind of contingency. At that point, we can do a budget transfer.
It's interesting.
Mr. President.
Commissioner Hart.
I have a question. You mentioned that you had kind of spoke with people about the needs, I guess, for the athletics, and you've brought up these field houses multiple times. Are you talking to, I don't know if you're talking to AD directors. I have never heard anyone request a field house, but I have heard turf fields at least once a week since I've been a commissioner for 7 years. So where's the data coming from? I mean, are AD directors saying, you know what, I don't want a turf field, I want a field house? Is that what you're hearing?
Yeah, I have a report that we can certainly forward you, that came out of a meeting.
I would love to see that. I would love to see all 4 AD directors asked for field houses over turf fields. And if you have that, I would love to see that.
I do have it, and I can certainly forward that to you.
And that's what,
The one school that did have a request for turf fields is Patuxent High School. However, the other three high schools did not have, they would actually have a preference for the Bermuda grass field. So they had other requests, and so certainly we can forward that report to you.
So Patuxent wants a field house and a turf field.
Correct.
Oh, boy.
But a turf field is certainly a lot more expensive.
Yeah, I know. You don't have to tell me.
Yes, so Patuxent was that request. However, the issues that they have with their field right now are very much drainage related, and there's already been some fall work that's been done to try to mitigate that, and there will be crowning work to their existing field that will start this summer. There's been money allocated for that to deal with that issue. In terms of turf field, that's a longer discussion. And as you know, it requires continuing capital every 10 years, so. Okay, let's see, so.
We're done?
We can be if you'd like.
In the out years on the remaining projects, there's significant money in '28. I'd like to know, are any of those, is any of that requested funding for a feasibility study on a replacement of another school, or the only school that we're looking at in the 6th year is Northern Middle and what was the other one?
Beach Elementary School, or?
Beach were.
Oh, Mount Harmony?
Mount Harmony.
Mount Harmony, yes, yeah.
So.
That, yes, 2028, that is the 2 million that you see, which would be, no, that's not the 2 million that you see. We'd have to go, let's see here, Mount Harmony. It's on the previous slide. So we'd have to go to slide 5.
There's 2 million in 28 for Mount Harmony.
Yes, and that is for anticipated design, which would be split between the state and the local, so yes.
So in our 6th year that we're looking at, we're just looking at, not just, of course, we're looking at replacement of Northern Middle and then Mount Harmony.
Planning for Mount Harmony, yes.
Planning for Mount Harmony. But
correct.
Those funds that you're showing in the other columns for the other schools are not feasibility or design?
There are not, in terms of new
Calvert
construction,
Elementary.
no. Calvert Elementary, there is
Calvert
a
Elementary.
feasibility study that we are showing, yes.
Okay.
Do I understand it that Mount Harmony Elementary at some point soon after 28 would be replaced? Is that what or am I missing something?
No, we have not done a feasibility study yet for Mount Harmony. That was in the CIP. We do have the funds for that. We need to do the feasibility study. But prior to that, we'll have to go through the process of developing programmatic requirements. The feasibility study will really flesh out whether that is a renovation or something more. So that's what the feasibility study will help us determine.
That's why I was wondering if we were going to spend $2 million on HVAC for a building that was going to
No.
be replaced.
No.
Okay, I misread it.
And there was some discussion about renovation over replacement of Northern Middle, but the request is for renovation. Is that replacement off the table now?
No, I don't know why is it shown as a renovation?
Yes.
No, it's not off the table.
Northern Middle is listed as a renovation on the slide 4 of the CIP.
Yeah, I do have it as renovation.
It should be a replacement.
Yeah, it should be a replacement.
I gotta keep
my
my eye on it all the time.
I cannot imagine.
We're spending money.
You've been in that building.
I thought it looked wonderful myself, but
Well, thank you.
it was clean. It wasn't falling down. It was.
We try to take care of them as best that we can.
The biggest complaint I heard was the design.
I'm sorry?
The biggest complaint I heard that day was the design. It's one of those open school designs, and that's why they don't like it. But
Well,
they chose that design.
The open classrooms.
back in the 70s, yeah, that was.
That was the
that
newest,
was-
best and greatest. Now,
that
who
was the
thought that
best
was the
and
best idea to have everybody in one big room? What? Never mind. I won't use what I was going to say, but really?
Yeah, I know.
And we sucked into it.
Everybody did.
That's no excuse. We
Well,
should
I
be better
wasn't
than
here.
that.
Maybe I could have said something back then.
I was in elementary school. I'm off the hook too.
There you go.
All right. Do we have any other questions?
No, sir.
Thank you, Shishita.
Thank you.
Shishita,
Absolutely.
thank you.
We got a long road
Absolutely.
to go.
You have one more slide.
Oh,
Just
we do.
one
No,
more.
I got one more
I
question.
know.
Okay.
I'm
It's a
sorry.
lot of projects.
Go ahead with your question, Commissioner.
So you're just going through the chart of revenues and who's paying what part. Gotcha.
I'll call Dr. Curry and ask him. It's just that simple yes or no question I ask each time.
She was told.
It's not,
So the answer is?
If I'm guessing, I would say that I don't know.
It remains the same, I assume.
Yes, I don't think that there has been any change.
Gotcha.
Her not wanting to be the bearer of bad news. Particularly when she's asking for
Money.
millions of dollars.
Actually, it was
For the good of the
almost 100
kids.
million. That's what I was looking at.
Yeah.
Almost $1/10 billion.
Yeah. But they'll say
Except
it
that,
real
yeah,
fast.
most
And by
of,
the time it gets to that point, it'll be $1/10 billion. But anyway. Sorry.
a lot of it, funded through, it does,
Yeah.
if you look at the education, the 19 million that you see here, 7.9 million is really the commissioner's
Yeah.
piece. So if it's compared to some of the other line items, certainly we're quite low.
It's still the citizens' money, whichever way you look at it.
Well, that's true. But, the governor has a CIP budget that he does every year, so if it doesn't come to us, it'll go to somebody else.
All right.
But we like you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll wrap it up very quickly. So this chart reflects the FY23 expenditure and revenue summary for all of the functional departments. So this gives you a big picture of FY23's. Our general fund is $51.9 million, if you see over to the right in the first table. Enterprise fund is $11,098,000. The enterprise fund is self-supporting, so the money from the citizens who use the facilities are the ones who pay for enterprise funds. Everything in general fund is a mix between pay-go, us, debt, where we sell bonds, state funding, grant funding. Excise tax can only be applied to education, parks and rec, and public works. So we split that as much as we can between them. And our total for FY23 is $63,073,637. And our debt is in the general fund line, not enterprise fund line, but it's under our projections for debt for FY23 right now.
Right now.
Correct.
Right
We're
now.
holding on to it very tightly, but of course, that's at your discretion.
I have faith you'll do a good job.
Les?
If we don't mess it up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
both
you.
of you. Have a great day.
Commissioners,
Thanks,
I
you
will
too.
say that Shachita is one of our founding members of our county green team. So she's on the conservative side. So we're trying to get there here too.
She's just doing her job. I know.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
All right. Last but not least, the last item on the agenda is public comment. And before we open up public comment, I do want to say that last week, or early this week, I don't even know exactly when it went out. I know, I'm there. The chief administrative judge who controls the courthouse has tightened up the restrictions, and we did put out an announcement that in light of that fact and try to keep foot traffic down on the courthouse, we were going to limit public comment to call-ins or emails. But we do have individuals that showed up today for public comment. We are definitely going to allow them to comment. We're not going to turn away any individual that makes the effort to come here. And we would love to have you all here, but just trying to conform with the rules and requirements of the chief administrative judge, we were just trying to eliminate some foot traffic. So having said that, for the future reference, for all of you out there listening, we would appreciate in the meantime, until things change, we're just trying to limit the foot traffic, as I said. Mr. Attorney.
Thank you. Commissioners have adopted rules to maintain the order and decorum in keeping with the dignity of the government process. A copy of that's here to my right. The lobbyists include those who seek to influence local policy and are compensated for doing so or provide gifts to local officials. Speakers and public comment are strongly encouraged to review the Calvert County Ethics Ordinance and register in advance if required to do so. So if there's anybody that'd like to provide public comment, please come to the microphone. Give us your name and address, and whether you're speaking as an individual or as the designated representative of a group. And you're welcome to this, but that's the microphone. Yes, sir.
Thank you, distinguished commissioners, for allowing me to speak. My name is Ed Baylor. I live in Owings, Maryland, Victoria Station. And this is the second time I've ever spoken before the commissioners. The first time, I led the charge against building an asphalt plant about 20-some years ago. Got together and they were building the asphalt plant, if you remember, in the minority community, and I led the charge to defeat it. It was a great thing. But today I want to talk to you about the police accountability. We heard this morning some changes, and what I would like to do is talk to you about Calvert County. People come and live here for our crime rate, our good policing, as you know, our way of life, and our education that we just heard about. But in reference to our policing, Commissioner Hutchins wrote the initial plan. It was well-founded, well-written, and it was well-researched. That plan is well-known throughout the country in rural jurisdictions and in cities. And it was accepted by the International Association of Chiefs of Police, National Search Association, Noble FBI National Academy. It's a well-written, well-founded plan. Now, some of you attended the meetings on trying to change the plan, and you heard the testimony from a lot of people. You heard testimony from me. There, in that group, there was kind of basic two groups. There was the good people of Calvert County thinking about good things and our good policing. And what I would like to say is there were some people there that had some very good input and would be good changes to the plan. But there was also people there, admitted criminals, okay, who they themselves admitted and was easily identified as they had vendetta and they wanted to be on the board against our police. You have one chance to get this right. You can't allow that to occur. And so, with that said, I want to thank you for this time. Please revisit the entirety of the Hutchins plan. Keep Calvert safe. I bless you in your decision. Thank you.
Please give your name and address and whether you're speaking as an individual or as a designated representative of a group.
Mr. President and Commissioners, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I'm Scott Kincaid. I'm a resident of Chesapeake Beach. And I also wanted to talk on the Police Accountability Board. As you know, the Maryland Police Accountability Act, when that act was signed into law, simultaneously the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights was repealed. And the stated intention at the state level was to incorporate rights for law enforcement officers into the Accountability Act. And so some of those rights do appear. We definitely want that procedure to be balanced so that either a law enforcement officer or an accused citizen does not read it and think that the deck is stacked against them. And so here in Calvert County, the draft that we're considering incorporates a lot of the language from the state law, and I think that's a good idea. As we talked about earlier with the juror qualifications, when we use language that's drafted elsewhere, it sort of insulates the county from criticism and accusations. So that's a good idea, but there is one section that I noticed where I think here in Calvert County we could improve on the state language, and that's with regard to the procedures for the charging committee. As the procedures are written out now, the first decision that the charging committee makes is whether to charge the officer. After that decision is made, then they can go on and determine whether the officer is exonerated. Now, I just have to think that that's a simple mistake or an oversight, because that really doesn't make sense, and it doesn't follow our normal American concept of justice, where you first determine whether a law was broken, and then you determine whether to charge a person. So I did submit language online that I think will fix that. If you look at the language in its entirety, you could conclude, well, we have room in there for exoneration, and so we're okay. But I think if we adjust the language and make clear that we're going to look and see if an officer violated the law or policy, and then decide whether to charge that officer, I think it'll be clear that that we are incorporating a balanced procedure that follows our basic principles of law. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.
And if you please state your name and address and whether you're speaking as a designated individual of a group or an individual.
My name is Nick Valtos. I live in Owings, Maryland. Mr. President, Commissioners, thank you for this opportunity. This bill, I think, was hastily conceived. I think that there's a lot of dangling participles in the fact that there's things that are in there that there's no definition for, no guidance for, just no direction for. Biggest thing that bothers me is it's an unfunded mandate for Calvert County. Another thing that bothers me is it takes away the autonomy of the sheriff to effectively run his office on a day-to-day basis. With that said, there's some things in there that talk about training. This is one of the dangling participles. Very simply put, it says people are going to be trained. It doesn't say what they're going to be trained on, who's going to be doing the training, where the training is going to be. And again, I guess this is an unfunded liability. Does Calvert County pick that cost up? The next thing that I think is really important is, you guys were talking earlier today about a juror standard and a background standard. Okay, well, there's two kinds of backgrounds. There's a background investigation, there's a background check. Background investigation actually goes out and interviews, takes statements, and talks to people. Background check merely checks records, motor vehicle. The other thing I think that's really important is the juror standard. Even if there is a juror standard, you spoke about this earlier, even if there is a juror standard, how do we validate the fact that what they put in that statement is true if we don't do some kind of background? And I think that that needs to be included. I'm not saying that it's not a good idea. All I'm saying is we just need to tighten up some of these dangling participles. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And there are still callers on the line. If anybody on the line would like to speak, please press *9 to raise your hand. Be identified by the last 4 digits of your phone number. Press *9.
Caller 3438. We are ready to receive your comments. Please state your name and address and whether you will be speaking as an individual or as the designated representative of a group. Please press *6 to unmute your phone.
Hello, my name is Catherine Grasso, and I'm speaking as an individual. I agree 100% with the first 3 speakers. My main thoughts, although I agree with all 3 of them, but me personally, I want to see our criteria tightened up. I think background checks are imperative. And I think the individuals who represent us or are on the board to judge right or wrong of our police officers should represent the demographics of Calvert County. We have to realize that the lives of these men and women will be in the board's hands. And we have got to cross our T's, dot our I's, and make sure the process is fair to everyone involved. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else online that wishes to provide comment, please press star 9. Okay, there are no other hands raised. That concludes.
No other speakers in the audience?
Any other speakers in the audience? No, sir.
Okay, very good. Thank you all. And we do have one item on the agenda for a budget transfer for the Board of Education. We don't have a representative from the Board of Education that was able to come today to. Oh, Shishita's gonna sit in.
She's gonna sit in and do her best.
You just
to
didn't
answer
get
your
enough the
question.
first
I'll do
time.
my best.
I caught
can't
her.
promise anything.
All right. So the next item on the agenda is a budget transfer for the Board of Education. Director.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Sharon Strand, Director now of Finance and Budget. Sorry about that.
Careful what you say.
Background, the Board of Education is requesting the Board of County Commissioners approve a budget adjustment for federal funds and other programs that were not outlined in the Board of Education's operating budget in fiscal year 2022, as well as increases and decreases in state construction funding. Discussion. The attached memo details the request. In summary, the Board of Ed requests to increase or decrease the FY22 restricted budgets for federal, state, and other programs, and for the construction fund to account for new grant awards, as well as increases and decreases in state construction funding. The Board of Education, or BOE, approved the adjustment to the restricted and construction fund revenue and expenditure budgets for FY 2022 at the meeting held on December 9th, 2021. The attachment A, titled Revenues and Expenditures, lists the awards. The expenditure categories impacted, the adjustments to state construction funding, and the construction projects impacted. Fiscal impact. There is no fiscal impact to the county for this action. Conclusion recommendation. Staff recommends that you approve the attached budget adjustment.
So we have the budget adjustment in front of us. Shishita, it's not your area, but it is a little confusing when they come in and it's the same amount of money, but then it lists it as different categories. So sometimes I'm not sure if it's $1 million or if it's only $500,000.
So this one's the first top one for non-construction is $538,356.
Yeah.
The top portion is the revenue,
Yeah.
and then the bottom portion under category is the expenditure line items that were impacted.
Thank you. Now I understand. So this money's already been received?
Correct.
It's a federal grant through ARPS or whatever? ARPS funds? Okay.
No, so this one, we did get a fine arts grant, and then, by looking at the detail that was provided us by the Board of Education, we did receive a fine arts grant, and we did receive a, CDC contract tracing grant, the Board of Education, and then a federal awards for trauma and behavioral grant. And they also did receive SMECO reimbursements, and they also received some other federal government awards.
How do you get a SMECO reimbursement?
I can actually speak to
You're on
that
the
one.
monthly plan?
This was, it was not a reimbursement, it was the energy rebate program.
Ah,
That was part of the Beach Elementary project when we, not Beach Elementary, I apologize, Northern High School. So essentially, when we selected equipment, and it's obviously a lead school, there was a large energy rebate that came back to that.
Right. Any questions?
Under the Trauma and Behavioral 2 grant, is the yoga training for the educators or the students? I'm just curious.
I'm sorry, I wish I knew, I have no idea.
I just saw
It's
yoga
something I
training
can't
in
really
there, and
speak
yoga
to.
training is part of 290,000, and I was curious if, are we training, is this a train the trainer for yoga, or, you know what I'm saying?
Commissioner Gadway, I have no idea. I can tell you I'm not receiving any yoga training, if that helps.
Okay.
You're missing the boat.
I'm not either. I just didn't know if the students were getting yoga training, and it was interesting. It kind of jumped off the page at me.
I can reach out to the Board of Education to get additional clarification on that one.
And what, the other thing what is a calming center? I have no idea what that is.
Again, I can reach out to them.
Okay. I guess maybe the yoga is in the calming center. I don't know.
I don't,
Okay.
I have
I
a calming
appreciate it.
center. It's my tractor.
Yeah, I have a calming center. It's, my truck.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Federal grants. Bless them.
Mr. President,
Action?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve said transfer.
Budget is.
Budget, Joe. I'm sorry.
Commissioner Hart?
Barely hanging on. The computer's dying fast.
Do you support this motion that's been made?
Yes.
Could you make a second, please?
Second.
I have a motion and a second that we approve the budget transfer for the Board of Education. Any discussion on that motion?
Yes, Mr. President.
Yes,
I would
sir.
like to hold off until we get answers to some of these questions, if that's possible.
Here's our issue.
Where's our, yeah.
Legally, we have to approve these within 30 days, and since we're not meeting next week,
Gotcha.
if we don't take action today, it's automatically going to be approved.
Okay, so we can take no action and it gets approved.
It's approved, yes.
And if
We-
we take action, it gets approved, but if we don't take action, it doesn't get approved.
Well, we could take an
Right.
action to disapprove it
Right.
or approve it,
Okay.
or take no action and it automatically gets approved.
I just wish and I hope in the future when we get some better explanations on some of the stuff that's listed, because you sit there and you look at very large amounts of money, in my opinion, large amounts of money, and just very, very limited scope of where it goes. That's all I ask.
So, and I don't know, I certainly don't know, but I would assume these are grants that have strings that require them to be spent in certain ways. And at least
Yes.
for this particular action, which is not a transfer, it's an adjustment of the budget based on grants,
I'm sorry.
that they received that money titled fine arts or whatever, but there were strings attached, and then they're adjusting their budget where that money actually goes. So somewhere in those three categories, there's salaries and wages. So they broke out from those three different grants and put that summary, and that's what's going on here today. Transfers are different. I would completely agree with you. When they start transferring money around, then
I got it.
there's, changes. But for this, for me, it's just a function. And
Correct. Typically, these grants they have to be very, very transparent and accountable for all of the funding streams, so.
And most federal grants, as we know from our work, they're tied to, you're going to do this.
Absolutely.
So
specific purposes.
only in response to, and we've tried to make sure that there's staff here, but Edie called in sick, and we hope she feels better.
She's certainly been under the weather. I heard her yesterday and
Yeah.
didn't sound good.
But for this, it's kind of straightforward, in my mind. So, any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for filling in.
Absolutely. I apologize. I
Nope.
didn't have all the answers.
Nope. Not your fault.
Nobody ever can.
Nope. So that takes us down to commissioner reports. Commissioner Hart.
Yes, Mr. President. I want to extend my deepest condolences to, I'm old-fashioned. I still say Mr. Brady, but Sonny Brady, his family. Boy, what a great family, what a great man. Did so much for this county. I mean, and I'm sure there's testimonials everywhere. It's really a shame we start losing some of these folks that they know the history of this county. They've been so involved with everything, and I just can't say enough, and my deepest condolences. And then Mary Collins passed away, her and her family. Me and Commissioner Weems were very family, went to school with everyone. My deepest condolences. She was an outstanding human being. She was a delight to talk to. Loved my conversations with her, and very sorry that they're both gone. And that's all I have for today.
Thank you, Commissioner Hart. Commissioner Gadway?
To echo on to Commissioner Hart's condolences, since our last meeting, we've seen a lot. I've seen a lot of friends and relatives who have gotten sick and or have passed away. And I want to just let everybody know, keep all of your friends and family in your prayers for health and well-being. And that's all for now. Thanks.
Commissioner Weems?
I too want to extend my condolences, in addition to the Brady and Collins family, the Chirilla and Harrington family. And on a positive note, I just want to wish everyone a happy new year. And as I stated in the opening prayer, I hope that this year we're able to see some type of progression in the diminishment and minimizing effects of the pandemic. I think that would be my wish, and that's all I have.
Thank you. So as I echo my fellow commissioners' comments, Sonny Brady gave his entire life to the Prince Rupert Rescue Squad. So it's very commendable service to the community. I attended the Chamber of Commerce legislative breakfast last week. There was wasn't very well attended, but there was weather issues, and there is a lot of illness going around, but had good discussions that day on some of their issues, and it was a good opportunity to interact and find out what's going on in our business community. Just want to remind everybody again, the Police Accountability Board public hearing is going to be January the 25th at 7 o'clock at the Harriet Brown. So if you have comments or criticisms, please show up. That's what this is all about, getting input from the community and making sure we do the best that we can with the hand that we're dealt. As was heard today in comments, it's an unfunded mandate that we have to fulfill, and unless there are some legislative changes in the upcoming session, we just got to follow through and keep moving forward and make sure we're ready on July 1st to implement that. Oh, and also today, if you weren't here for our full meeting, Delegate Clark announced that he will not be seeking re-election as our delegate, which we're greatly going to miss Delegate Clark. He too has committed a significant portion of his life to public service, and we're all going to miss him and wish him all the best and for a bright future. Got one more session to go through, but we look forward to working with him during this session. So that's all I have. Commissioner Weems?
Yes, sir, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion to enter executive session pursuant to General Provisions Article Section 3-305B1-2 3-2 to discuss personnel matters that affect one or more specific individuals over whom it has jurisdiction, and Section 3-05B7 to obtain legal advice.
Second.
Have a motion and a second that we go into executive session. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Everyone have a great day.